Chapter 872. Contract Scroll Crack. Zhuo felt as if all his internal organs had shifted, and he was burning with pain. His sternum had been completely shattered by the Azure Supreme Theater's stomp. Although Zhuo's recovery ability was very strong, his current injury was too terrible. It would take a long time for him to recover. Emperor Qing was also very ruthless. The sole of his foot contained a sealing power that sealed Zhuo's cultivation. If you had cooperated earlier, you wouldn't have had to suffer such physical pain. The Azure Emperor snorted coldly. With a wave of his right hand, he grabbed Zhuo's collar and lifted him up. He looked up at the huge black dragon in the sky and said indifferently, "This Zhuo's life is in my hands. Once he dies, your dragon soul will have no one to rely on. At that time, you can only rely on me. Emperor Qing, you bastard." The black dragon roared. Its voice was full of anger. Emperor Qing was so despicable. He actually used Zhuo to threaten it. "It seems that your energy is very strong. I need to calm you down." Emperor Qing squinted his eyes. Then, he pinched his sword with his right hand and pointed at Zhuo's glabella. A green light suddenly drilled into Zhuo's glabella. The destructive power of this green light was extremely terrible. It penetrated Zhuo's glabella and entered his sea of consciousness. The terrifying power of the green light raged and destroyed Zhuo's sea of consciousness. In the Mudpill Palace, due to the raging green light, the mind power of complete level 5 gushed out together, trying to completely suppress the invading green light. The cultivation of your mind power is not bad. It has reached complete level 5. Emperor Qing's eyes narrowed and his mouth was full of a sneer. He pointed his sword again and an even more terrible green light invaded. Suddenly, the mind power in Zhuo's sea of consciousness collapsed into countless pieces under the attack of the green light. The green light fearlessly entered the depths of Zhuo's sea of consciousness. At this moment, Zhuo's face was extremely pale. His face was full of ferocity, which was a violent reaction caused by the severe pain. "Poochie." Zhuo spat out a mouthful of blood and said through gritted teeth, "Azure the Arch. What are you trying to do? What are you doing? Your sea of consciousness is the habitat of this black dragon. If you want to weaken this black dragon, the only way is to completely destroy your sea of consciousness. This way, this black dragon will collapse on its own." The Azure Supreme the Arch laughed coldly as an even stronger azure light entered Zhuo's glabella. Zhuo felt an explosion in his mind as intense pain spread throughout his head, causing Zhuo to roar involuntarily. "Awoo!" At this moment, Xiao Hei's huge dragon body began to dim due to the damage to Zhuo's sea of consciousness. In the end, it became somewhat illusory and transparent. Xiao Hei's eyes also became somewhat listless. Xiao Hei was a dragon soul that was attached to Zhuo's spiritual sea. The two of them were closely related. If Zhuo's spiritual sea was damaged, Xiao Hei would naturally be greatly affected. Azure Supreme the Arch. If I, Zhuo, don't die, I will definitely make you pay me back 1,000 times in the future. At this moment, Zhuo's eyes were bloodshot due to the intense pain. He looked exceptionally ferocious and terrifying. However, the Azure Supreme the Arch sneered and said, "Pay me back 1,000 times? I don't think you have that chance. Now, you are just a weakling. A weakling should have the awareness of a weakling. A weakling is born to obey the strong. You are just an ant in my eyes." After saying that, the Azure Supreme the Arch ignored Zhuo. Instead, he took a step forward and instantly flew towards Xiao Hei in the sky. His eyes were burning with passion. He had already experienced how powerful Xiao Hei was. He had to obtain this terrifying dragon soul. Awoo! At this moment, Xiao Hei's huge dragon body had already become a little dim and illusory. However, its eyes were still filled with ferocity. When it saw the Azure Supreme the Arch flying towards it, it roared angrily. A dragon claw that was a few hundred feet long struck out, bringing with it endless black fog. It wanted to kill the Azure Supreme the Arch completely. Sensing the terrifying power of this claw, the Azure Supreme Theater's expression changed slightly. He had not expected this black dragon to be able to unleash such a terrifying attack even though it was already so weak. "Zhuo is in my hands. You won't have any chance to show off your skills. The Azure Supreme the Arch grinned and pointed his sword finger at Zhuowen's glabella again. Green light surged into Zhuowen's spiritual sea and messed up Zhuowen's spiritual sea again. This caused Zhuowen to roar in pain again. On the other hand, Xiao He looked up to the sky and groaned in pain. The dragon claw that it had struck out deviated from its course and landed on a piece of barren land below. Boom! Instantly, the barren land below cracked under this attack, forming a huge pit that was as deep as an abyss. What a terrifying attack power! Looking at the deep pit that Xiao He had created, the Azure Supreme Theacher's eyes turned cold. Xiao He was already so weak, but he was still able to unleash such a terrifying attack. The Azure Supreme the Arch knew that if he had taken the attack head-on, although he could have withstood it, the outcome would not have been good for him. The Azure Supreme the Arch is despicable. In the distance, Lu Hantian and Elder Shiyuan, who were lying on the ground, saw this scene. Their eyes were filled with anger and they gritted their teeth. Every time Xiao He attacked the Azure Supreme the Arch would use the same move to mess up Zhuowen's spiritual sea. This caused Xiao He's attack to be in vain and Xiao He became weaker and weaker. Zhuowen was in an even worse state. His spiritual sea had been damaged many times and the extreme pain had stimulated Zhuowen's consciousness to the point that it started to blur. His 7 orifices were bleeding and he was in a daze. I am too weak. I'm still too weak. Zhuowen clenched his fists tightly and allowed the Azure Supreme the Arch to lift him up. He stared at the increasingly illusory black dragon in front of him and the unwillingness on his face intensified. Then, he fell into a coma amidst the excruciating pain. He actually fainted from the pain? The Azure Supreme the Arch also noticed that Zhuowen had fainted. His eyes flickered and he muttered, "Anyway, the black dragon is almost weakened. This lad is no longer of any value." Having said that, the Azure Supreme the Arch threw Zhuowen down from a high altitude. At that moment, Zhuowen's cultivation was completely sealed by the Azure Supreme the Arch and he was in a coma. Falling from a high altitude of 10,000 meters would undoubtedly cause his body to be smashed to pieces. This Zhuowen is finished. He fell from a height of 5,000 kilometers. He's dead for sure. Countless warriors looked at Zhuowen, who had been thrown down by the Azure Supreme the Arch, with pity in their eyes. It was a high altitude. Even a heavenly venerate expert would be smashed to pieces if he fell to the ground without any defensive measures, let alone Zhuowen. After throwing Zhuowen aside, the Azure Supreme the Arch focused all his attention on the black dragon. At that moment, the black dragon was so illusory that it was almost transparent. Its huge dragon eyes were drooping weakly. The Azure Supreme the Arch had destroyed Zhuowen's consciousness mercilessly just now, causing Xiao He, who was closely related to Zhuowen, to be greatly affected. At that moment, she was much weaker than before. Zhuowen is too weak. You can't make the best use of him. Follow me, and I can bring you unparalleled glory. The Azure Supreme the Arch placed his hands behind his back and looked at Xiao He indifferently. Haha. You are just a despicable and shameless person. What right do you have to have me? Although Xiao He was extremely weak at the moment, she was still unyielding. The Azure Supreme the Arch snorted coldly. He waved his right hand and a black scroll appeared. He said coldly, "Whether you agree or not, you will be mine. This is a contract scroll. It can forcefully separate you from Zhuowen. At that time, I only need to refine the scroll, and you will be my eternal slave." As he spoke, the Azure Supreme the Arch instantly appeared above Xiao He. He pressed down with his right hand, and countless green lights gathered to form a huge green hand that was close to 1,000 feet long. It pressed down on Xiao He. Roar! Xiao He roared angrily. She also struck out with her claws, trying to block the Azure Supreme Theacher's huge green hand. You have already become so weak. Do you still have the ability to fight me? The Azure Supreme the Arch laughed proudly. The huge green hand collided with the dragon claw. In an instant, green and black lights burst out and filled the entire void. Suppress her. The Azure Supreme the Arch roared. The power of the huge green hand increased again. It crushed the dragon claw and slammed heavily on Xiao He's body. Boom! Xiao Hei's huge dragon body was covered by the huge green hand and was pressed to the ground. No matter how much she struggled, the huge green hand was too strong. She could not break free at all. Swoosh! The Azure Supreme the Arch stood on the huge green hand and smiled proudly. He waved his right hand and immediately opened the contract scroll. The contract scroll was engraved with blood-red runes. These runes looked extremely ancient and were the result of thousands of years of experience. The Azure Supreme the Arch drew a line across his right palm. Instantly, fresh blood spurted out. He then pressed his palm against the contract scroll without hesitation. Pust pust pust. As the fresh blood dripped into the contract scroll, the blood-red runes on the scroll seemed to come alive. They started to squirm. Then, the blood-red runes left the scroll. Like a long snake, they shot toward Xiao Hei, who was being suppressed by the huge green hand. The blood-red runes shot out from the scroll and surrounded Xiao Hei, binding her tightly. She could not move at all. Roar! Xiao Hei roared into the sky and began to struggle. Unfortunately, the blood-red runes and the huge green hand had her completely suppressed. Don't be afraid. Very soon, you will become one with me. I will bring you along and make you famous in the Eastern land. When that time comes, you will enjoy unparalleled glory. The Azure Supreme the Arch stomped his foot and a terrifying power poured out. Xiao Hei was pressed to the ground and could not move at all, while the Azure Supreme the Arch and everyone's attention was on Xiao Hei. The bronze coffin behind Zhuowen, who was falling from mid-air, slowly opened. Wisps of blood-red aura surrounded Zhuowen. These wisps of blood-red aura entered Zhuowen's body through the major acupoints on his body. Zhuowen, the reason why you are suffering like this is because you are too weak. On this mainland, the weak have no right to speak or live. Because you are weak, those who are stronger than you can humiliate you and trample on your dignity. Chapter 873. Becoming a demon on the spot. The darkness was so dark that one couldn't even see one's own fingers. There was no light at all. At this moment, the scene before Zhuowen's eyes was one of nothingness. The Azure Emperor's silhouette gradually appeared in front of Zhuowen. At this moment, the Azure Emperor was high above, looking down at Zhuowen. His eyes were filled with indifference and arrogance. Maybe in the eyes of the Azure Emperor, Zhuowen was no different from an ant. Qing Supreme the Arch, what did you do to Xiao Hei? Where is this? Zhuowen stared coldly at the Qing Supreme the Arch. The Qing Supreme the Arch laughed mockingly. You are just a weakling now. A weakling should have the awareness of a weakling. A weakling is born to obey the strong. Do you think an ant like you is qualified to ask me a question? You are going too far. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. He took a step forward and dashed towards the Qing Supreme the Arch. He threw a punch with his right hand and wanted to kill the Qing Supreme the Arch. Swoosh! However, when Zhuowen's fist was about to touch the Qing Supreme the Arch, he realized that it was as if he had punched the air. The Qing Supreme the Arch disappeared into the darkness instantly. Zhuowen, you are too weak. What right do you have to go against the Qing Supreme the Arch? What right do you have to be compared to the Qing Supreme the Arch? In the eyes of the Qing Supreme the Arch, you are just a valuable ant. A low and deep voice came from the depths of the darkness, echoing in the surroundings. It was repeated over and over again, echoing endlessly. Who's playing tricks on me? Zhuowen's hair stood on end. He could not sense where the voice came from. It was as if the voice had appeared out of nowhere in the darkness. Pest! A pair of blood-red eyes appeared in the darkness in front of Zhuowen. They were filled with bloodlust and murderous intent. Zhuowen glanced at them and felt agitated. Blood demon? Zhuowen suppressed the agitation in his heart. He squinted his eyes and said in a low voice, He, it is me. The Qing Supreme the Arch can treat you like this mainly because you are weak. Could it be that you still want to endure the feeling of being unable to resist just now? Do you still want to be held hostage by the Azure Emperor and do nothing for yourself? A pair of blood-red eyes stared at Zhuowen quietly. Emperor Qing is in the sovereign realm, and I'm only in the sovereign realm. It's natural for me to be weaker than him. Can you give me the power to defeat the Azure the Arch? Zhuowen asked cautiously. Although he had reached an agreement with the Blood Devil, it was only a verbal agreement. There were no restrictions at all. The Blood Demon was an ancient saint-level demon, an extremely cunning and terrifying creature. Zhuowen was naturally wary of it. Hee. Why not? As long as you open the bronze coffin and let me out, I can help you kill the Azure the Arch. Emperor Qing is only a second-level martial emperor. I can kill him with a wave of my hand. Zhuowen, as long as you let me out, I can save you and help you kill Emperor Qing. What do you think? The blood-red eyes stared fixedly at Zhuowen, and his voice was full of persuasion. Zhuowen laughed and said indifferently, Blood Demon, do you really think I'm a 3-year-old child? If I let you out, with your strength, you won't deal with the Azure Emperor. You will deal with me instead. Humph. You are now high up in the sky without any defensive measures. If you fall like this, you will definitely die. Without my power, you will definitely die. If you let me out, you will still have a chance to live. If you don't, you will die. The Blood Demon snorted coldly. I don't need to let you out. I can still borrow your power. Zhuo Wen's expression was cold. With a flip of his right hand, a blood-red mark was engraved on his palm. This blood-red mark was very inconspicuous. If one did not look carefully, they would not be able to see it. However, at this moment, the mark was shining with a blood-red light. In this pitch-black environment, it was like a bright lamp. Blood inheritance seal? Why do you have such a thing? It's impossible. When the pair of blood-red eyes hidden in the darkness saw the blood-red mark on Zhuo Wen's palm, its pupils shrank, and it actually retreated continuously. Let's see where you can retreat to. Zhuowen sneered. He clapped his right hand, and the blood inheritance seal on his palm exploded with an unprecedented blood-red light. The blood-red light was like a thread, and it flew towards the blood-red eyes. The blood-red light was extremely effective against the blood-red eyes. Although the blood demon retreated, he was still enveloped by the blood-red light. It turned into a blood-red cage, trapping the blood-red eyes. Whoosh! Zhuowen waved his right hand, and the blood-red eyes that were trapped in the blood-red cage were immediately caught in his palm. Why do you have the blood inheritance seal? This thing clearly only exists in my lair. How did you get it? The blood demon's voice was filled with fear. Brother Han Tian gave it to me. Back then, Brother Han Tian and I barged into your lair and found this blood inheritance seal in a blood-red space. Since you were sealed in the bronze coffin by me, Brother Han Tian gave this blood inheritance seal to me. However, unless I have no other choice, I will never use this thing. Unfortunately, we've reached the point where we have no other choice. At this point, Zhuowen's voice suddenly became gloomy. He stared at the blood-red light that was flickering in his palm. I advise you not to use this blood inheritance seal carelessly. If you are not careful, you will become a demon. At that time, you will become a demon who kills everyone in sight. This thing will not benefit you or me. I promise you, if you let me out, I will not attack you or anyone related to you. The blood demon's voice became extremely anxious. Zhuowen shook his head and said, I don't trust you. I only trust myself. So what if I become a demon? Now that I have reached the end of my rope, for power, what's wrong with becoming a demon? You madman, Yang Qi said. Once you become a devil, not only will you consume my essence, but your own life essence will also be consumed. When that time comes, your cultivation base and your life force will fade away and become devil will. It's a thankless task. The blood demon spoke again. This time, there was a hint of flattery and negotiation in his voice. Blood demon. I didn't expect you to feel fear. Zhuowen suddenly laughed. His laughter was extremely crazy. Since he had reached the end of his rope, why would he, Zhuowen, not dare to fight? At that moment, the only thing in Zhuowen's heart was the desire to live. He could not die, nor would he allow himself to die. This was not because he, Zhuowen, was afraid of death, but because of Mu Chunxue. The cold poison in Mu Chunxue's body was too strong, and she only had less than 3 years left. Zhuowen had a way to fuse with the heavenly flame. This heavenly flame could save Mu Chunxue, and also help Mu Chunxue extend her life. Mu Chunxue's cold poison had not been cured, and the heavenly flame had not been successfully fused. How could he, Zhuowen, die? So what if he turned into a demon? He, Zhuowen, had to go to Jioshan Academy and take the heavenly flame to find Mu Chunxue. Even if he turned into a demon, he had to complete this knot in his heart. Is it so scary to turn into a demon? After saying this, Zhuowen clenched his fist. The blood-red cage and the pair of blood-red eyes were crushed by Zhuowen at the same time. Zhuowen, you will regret this. You actually dared to treat this demon like this, you damned human. The blood demon's voice became softer and softer, until it was inaudible. Shortly after, Zhuowen discovered that the surrounding darkness was gradually fading away, replaced by a scarlet color. The pitch-black world turned into a bloody region. Kill. 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 In the bloody region, the countless resentment turned into blood qi, turning into thousands of strands that flowed into Zhuowen's body like rivers flowing into the sea. The terrifying negative emotions within the resentment filled Zhuowen's mind, causing countless unsightly, hellish scenes to appear in Zhuowen's mind. These scenes were the memories of the countless resentment when they were alive, and they were all extremely hateful and ugly memories. For power, I, Zhuowen, am willing to turn into a demon. He roared into the sky. Instantly, countless resentment surged into Zhuowen's body. At this moment, Zhuowen's eyes were filled with blood-red color. The blood-red color was extremely ferocious and terrifying, as if it did not belong to a human. It was filled with too much killing intent, resentment, and bloodthirstiness. All the negative emotions in the world appeared in these blood-red eyes. These resentment were the terrifying negative energy that the blood demon had accumulated from the endless killings he had caused in the ancient times. At the same time, they were the source of the blood demon's power. Now, Zhuowen was absorbing these negative energies without restraint. In fact, he was absorbing the blood demon's power. The blood demon was suppressed by Zhuowen's blood inheritance seal, so he could only watch as Zhuowen continuously absorbed his power. At this moment, everyone's attention was on the Cyan Emperor and the Black Dragon. At this moment, countless blood-red runes had enveloped Xiao Hei's huge dragon body. Xiao Hei was getting weaker and weaker. He had struggled with all his might at the beginning, but now, he was motionless, as if he had accepted his fate. The Cyan Emperor's face became more and more pleased, and his eyes were filled with passion. Finally, this powerful dragon soul was going to be his. Rumble. A thunderous sound rang out, and Zhuowen's body finally smashed into the ground, stirring up a dense cloud of dust that covered everyone's vision. Falling from a height of 10,000 meters, Zhuowen is dead for sure. Because of this loud sound, many people's eyes fell on the place where Zhuowen had fallen. Although everyone knew that Zhuowen was definitely going to die, they still wanted to see how Zhuowen was doing. As the dust gradually settled, a figure was faintly discernible within the dust. The clear sound of footsteps was so clear and loud at this moment. It was as if these footsteps were stepping on everyone's hearts, tightly gripping their hearts. The Cyan Emperor frowned slightly. Naturally, he had also heard the steady footsteps. His eyes were filled with doubt. He did not believe that Zhuowen was still alive, and that he could walk out because of this. When the Azure the Arch turned his head to look, he was stunned because the figure that walked out of the dust was none other than Zhuowen. Chapter 874. Bedevilment Massacre. Staring at Zhuowen, who was slowly walking towards him with those inhuman crimson eyes, Emperor Qing's eyes narrowed. At this moment, Zhuowen gave him a strange feeling. It was as if the Zhuowen in front of him was not a human, but an ancient demon. Waves of terrifying blood qi rose around Zhuowen like steam. Emperor Qing frowned slightly. He could vaguely feel that something was wrong with Zhuowen's current state. Moreover, Zhuowen's cultivation had been completely sealed by him just now, making him a target for others to slaughter. However, not only was Zhuowen's cultivation unaffected, but his aura was also much more terrifying than before. Hey Yao! Bring the guards of the dungeon and take him down. If possible, kill him on the spot. Emperor Qing's eyes were cold. Since He Yarrow was already under his control, Emperor Qing no longer cared about Zhuowen's life. Blood inheritance seal? Zhuowen couldn't have used the blood inheritance seal, right? In the distance, Lu Hantian, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, also noticed Zhuowen's strange state. His eyes widened as an ominous feeling rose in his heart. He had obtained the blood inheritance seal from the blood demon's lair. With the blood inheritance seal, Zhuowen could easily suppress the blood demon. However, other than suppression, the blood inheritance seal also had another function, which was to absorb the power of the blood demon for one's own use, turning one into a demon immediately. It could be said that the drawback of the blood inheritance seal was too great. If one was not careful, one would fall into a demon forever and become a demon who would kill anyone he saw, incurring a boundless debt of blood. At this moment, Zhuowen's state showed signs of turning into a demon. Lu Hantian knew that Zhuowen must have used the blood inheritance seal that he had given him previously. In the open space outside the dungeon, there were thousands of guards. He Yarrow, He Yu, and He She were the three leaders of the Black Beast army. These guards were basically under the command of the three of them. At the same time, Emperor Qing waved his right hand and two talismans appeared in his palm. He crushed the talismans and two green light pillars appeared not far away from him. Xiang Tianzuan and Heavenly Master Huang Jiao, who had escaped, appeared in the green light pillars. At this moment, both of them looked confused. They were originally still running away, but were hit by the two light pillars, and then they were here. Xiang, Huang Jiao, this is the Emperor Qing's Emperor Qing. The Dragon Soul. The two, Emperor Qing's Emperor Qing. Emperor Qing had Emperor Huang Jiao, and Huang Jiao. Emperor Huang Jiao, Emperor. At this moment, Emperor Qing's eyes became extremely solemn. He was constantly using the power in the contract scroll to refine the Black Dragon. Hence, he could not afford to make any mistakes. Xiang Tianzuan and Heavenly Master Huang Jiao then reacted. They knew that Emperor Qing had brought them here. At the same time, they also saw Lu Hantian and Elder Shi Yuan, who were severely injured not far away. Their eyes were filled with shock. It seemed that Emperor Qing's strength was beyond their expectations. Even Lu Hantian and Elder Shi Yuan had been easily defeated. Hence, the two of them were even more in awe of Emperor Qing. They quickly accepted the order and flew towards Lu Hantian and Elder Shi Yuan. Since Emperor Qing had ordered them to do so, they had no choice but to obey. Zhuowen also noticed Xiang Tianzuan and Heavenly Master Huang Jiao's whereabouts. He let out a low growl from his throat and the crimson light in his eyes became even more intense. Rumble. With a stomp of his foot, the entire ground shook a few times. Zhuowen then flew towards Xiang Tianzuan and Heavenly Master Huang Jiao to stop them. Let's see where you can run to, He Yarrow shouted coldly. He led He She, He Yu, and a few thousand guards behind him to intercept Zhuowen from mid-air. His eyes were filled with hostility. Scram or die. At this moment, Zhuowen still retained his consciousness. Although countless resentment filled his mind and Zhuowen's heart was filled with killing intent, his willpower was extremely strong and he was not affected by the desire to kill. How arrogant of you to ask so many of us to scram. You are just a small sovereign realm martial artist. What qualifications do you have? He Yarrow sneered. However, just as He Yarrow finished his words, Zhuowen appeared in front of He Yarrow as though he had teleported. His right hand formed a blade and slashed at He Yarrow from bottom to top. Tearing sounds could be heard continuously. So fast. He Yarrow was taken aback, but his reaction wasn't slow. He roared angrily and raised his spear to block Zhuowen's attack. Crack. A crisp sound could be heard. Before He Yarrow could react, his spear was broken into two by Zhuowen's attack. The sharp blood qi instantly invaded He Yarrow's body. Ah! He Yarrow screamed as his chest was pierced by Zhuowen's attack. Then, Zhuowen pulled his right hand and a terrifying force poured out. He Yarrow exploded into a cloud of blood mist. TSK. 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 Zhuowen clenched his right hand and the blood mist that He Yarrow had turned into started to condense into a bloody spear in Zhuowen's hand. There were even protrusions on the surface of the spear that looked like blood vessels. In an instant, He Yarrow, who was an advanced golden sovereign, was killed. In an instant, the guards surrounding Zhuowen fell into an eerie silence. They were all dumbfounded as they watched the scene unfold before them. Kill! Kill! Zhuowen roared as he stomped his foot and came before He Yu and He She. He waved the blood spear in his hand and countless blood chi gushed out, forming a blood vortex. He Yu and He Shi's expressions changed slightly. They both used their strongest moves in an attempt to block Zhuo Wen's attack. Puff, puff. 2 streams of blood spurted out. Zhuo Wen had only thrown out 2 spear strikes. He Yu and He Shi, who were both golden sovereigns, were killed without any resistance. Plop. The 2 corpses fell from the sky once again, and only then did the surrounding guards completely react. Kill. This man sneakily attacked Commander He Yao. We can't let him go. Kill him. Seeing He Yao and the other 2 dead, the surrounding guards were not afraid. Instead, they were filled with rage as they charged towards Zhuo Wen. They wanted to kill Zhuo Wen once and for all. You're courting death. Zhuo Wen's deep voice resounded as he waved his blood spear. Countless blood vortexes swept out from the surroundings. Ah, ah, ah. Blood-curdling screams were heard as the blood vortexes were like a meat grinder, killing all the surrounding guards. Blood mist burst out and formed a blood rain in the sky. Zhuo Wen did not say a word. He was as silent as gold, but his blood spear was extremely terrifying. With a single thrust of his spear, dozens of soldiers screamed and turned into a bloody mist. With one step, dozens of guards were killed. Blood rain fell. Finally, the surrounding guards who were surrounding Zhuo Wen started to feel fear. Their bodies were shivering and their eyes were filled with fear. The figure that was slowly walking out from the blood rain was like an Azura that had walked out from the Azura hell. The blood spear that was cast with blood was like the light of death. Every time it flashed, it would take away a life. This was a completely unequal battle. At the same time, it was an unbelievable massacre. Run. He's not a human. He's a demon. He's a demon who kills without batting an eye. Everyone, run. When Zhuo Wen killed 2/3 of the guards, the remaining guards were finally terrified. They roared and fled in all directions. Run! Will it really work? Zhuo Wen's eyes turned even redder and sharper, as if he had truly turned into a devil. With a stomp of his foot, the surrounding blood chi condensed into numerous blood spears. Whoosh! Whoosh! Countless blood spears shot out from Zhuo Wen, shooting towards the guards who were fleeing in all directions. Miserable cries rang out continuously. With Zhuo Wen as the center, all the cultivators within a 5-kilometer radius exploded into a bloody mist under the attack of the blood spear. Hiss hiss hiss. In an instant, thousands of guards were killed, including He Yao, He Yu and He Shi, the 3 golden venerables. Such a mournful scene appeared in the eyes of the surrounding warriors, causing them to suck in a breath of cold air. How did this Zhuo Wen suddenly become so terrifying? As a mere supreme being, not only had he managed to kill 3 golden supreme beings who were at a higher level than him, he had even managed to kill several thousand guards. Just how powerful was he to be able to accomplish this? Kill! 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 Zhuo Wen bellowed. With a stomp of his foot, he turned into a crimson light and shot towards Lu Hantian. At this moment, Zhang Tianzuan and Heavenly Master Huang Jiao were extremely close to Lu Hantian and Elder Shi Yuan. Of course, the 2 of them had also noticed Zhuo Wen who was chasing after them. Regardless of whether it was Zhang Tianzuan or Heavenly Master Huang Jiao, they did not pay much attention to Zhuo Wen. At the beginning, the 2 Heavenly Masters were rather surprised when Zhuo Wen unleashed his strength to kill Heavenly Master Whitebrow and the thousands of guards. However, Heavenly Master Whitebrow was the weakest among the 5 Heavenly Masters. Furthermore, his strength had decreased sharply due to the loss of an arm. Zhuo Wen could only barely defeat Heavenly Master Whitebrow after unleashing his trump card. Regardless of whether it was Zhang Tianzuan or Heavenly Master Huang Jiao, they were much stronger than Heavenly Master Whitebrow. On the other hand, Zhuo Wen was only a supreme being. Thus, the 2 of them did not take Zhuo Wen seriously. Even though Zhuo Wen's performance was extremely stunning and he had killed several thousand guards in an instant, it did not attract the attention of the 2 Heavenly Masters at all. Heavenly Master Huang Jiao. This little bastard Zhuo Wen is overestimating himself. Go and kill him on the spot. There's no need to be courteous to him anymore, Zhang Tianzuan instructed Heavenly Master Huang Jiao, who was standing beside him. Looking at Zhang Tianzuan's appearance, Heavenly Master Huang Jiao cursed in his heart. The easy task of sealing Lu Hantian and Elder Xuan's cultivation had been monopolized by Xiang Tianzuan. However, Heavenly Master Huang Jiao actually had to deal with that little bastard Zhuoan for him. This made Heavenly Master Huang Jiao extremely unhappy. However, even though he was unhappy, Xiang Tianzuan's status was still higher than his, and he was also the leader of the 5 Heavenly Masters. He could only swallow his unhappiness. Little bastard. It just so happens that I need to find something to vent my anger on. I'll use you as my replacement. Chapter 875. Bloodshot hair and bloodshot eyes, you little bastard who overestimates yourself. You'd better die for me. Heavenly Master Huang Jiao charged at Zhuoan. His right hand formed a claw and pressed down on Zhuoan. Terrifying yuan power condensed and pressed down on Zhuoan's head. Rumble. The huge yuan power claw crushed down, causing invisible whirlpools to form around it. It was as if the surrounding space was about to collapse. Thud. 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 Zhuoan swung his bloody spear and slammed into the yuan power claw. His body stiffened and he took a few steps back before stopping. His scarlet eyes stared coldly at Heavenly Master Huang Jiao. A piece of trash like you dares to overestimate yourself and come here to stop me and Celestial Sovereign Ziyang. I really don't know where you get your courage from. Celestial Sovereign Huang Jiao's eyes were filled with disdain as he watched Zhuoan retreat. Trash. Do you think you have the right to criticize me? You abandoned your companions and fled alone, causing Heavenly Master Guanghan and Heavenly Master Shi Yu to become your sacrificial lambs. Do you think a despicable and shameless person like you has the right to criticize me? Zhuoan sneered. Heavenly Master Huang Jiao glared and shouted angrily, nonsense. I'll kill you today. Heavenly Master Huang Jiao flew toward Zhuoan like a rock spreading its wings. The aura of a mid-heavenly master surged out, causing countless yuan power whirlpools to form. Kill me. I'm afraid you don't have the right to do so. Zhuoan's eyes flashed coldly as he exhaled. He patted the bronze coffin behind him and opened it by a third. Zhuoan didn't open the coffin to release the pressure of the blood demon to deter his opponents. Instead, he planned to absorb the blood demon's power for his own use. With the blood inheritance seal, Zhuoan could absorb the blood demon's power to increase his own strength. However, the more he absorbed the blood demon's power, the more terrifying the influence of the blood demon's hatred would become. Zhuoan, you lunatic. How dare you absorb my power? Do you want to die? As soon as the lid of the coffin was opened, the blood demon's shrill cry rang out. However, Zhuoan automatically ignored the blood demon's voice and activated the blood inheritance seal in his hand. Instantly, waves of blood energy were transmitted from the coffin. Boom. As the blood demon's power surged into Zhuoan's body, the aura within his body became increasingly terrifying. Lines of blood began to appear on the surface of his skin. They were like bursting blood vessels, making him look extremely terrifying. As for Zhuoan's black hair, it gradually turned from black to blood red under the corrosion of the blood red energy. His blood red eyes and blood red hair made Zhuoan look exceptionally demonic at this moment. Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic hadn't expected Zhuoan to undergo such a transformation. Furthermore, the aura that Zhuoan exuded was much stronger than before. It was almost at the level of a Empyrean. What did this kid do? How did his aura soar so much? I can't let him continue like this. I have to kill him quickly. Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic's eyes narrowed. He took a step forward and quickly approached Zhuoan. Then, his right palm suddenly blasted out with a terrifying aura. He wanted to kill Zhuoan with one strike. Boom. Zhuoan's eyes were cold. He clenched his left hand into a fist and didn't dodge Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic's attack. Instead, he threw out a punch that sounded like thunder. Bang! When the fist and palm collided, a thunderous explosion rang out. Immediately after, a raging wind gushed out from the fist and palm. Get lost! Zhuoan roared. More and more lines of blood gushed out from the surface of his arm. His fist was also wrapped by the lines of blood, turning into the color of blood. It looked extremely terrifying. Poochie. Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic's expression changed slightly. He didn't expect Zhuowen's strength to become so terrifying. Caught off guard, he was forced to retreat with a groan. Kill. When Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic retreated, Zhuowen instantly rushed forward. The blood spear in his hand became even more demonic. He flicked the tip of the spear and instantly crossed paths with Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic. Poochie. A wisp of blood spurted out. Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic's pupils constricted. Before he could even react, Zhuowen had already passed by him, taking his right arm with him. Ah! Heavenly Sovereign Huang Jiao let out a miserable shriek. His left hand covered the wound on his right arm, which was now completely empty. He hurriedly spat out Yuan power to stop the blood from flowing out of his wound. His feet moved as he continuously retreated. His eyes were filled with shock as he stared at the blood-haired young man. How is this possible? Zhuowen is clearly only a supreme stage cultivator. How can he display such powerful strength? Kill. Zhuowen's right hand spun. The blood spear spun rapidly and turned into a bloody light that shot towards Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic. Block it. It must have been an illusion just now. Zhuowen can't possibly possess such powerful strength. Even if he does, he can only use it once. It's impossible for him to use it repeatedly. Suppressing the fear in his heart, Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic constantly comforted himself. His left hand formed a palm and surging origin energy formed an origin energy shield in front of him. Ding! The bloody light descended and instantly stopped. It stopped outside the origin energy shield and revealed the true appearance of the blood spear, which was spinning at high speed. Die. The moment the blood spear touched the origin energy shield, a cold voice came from behind Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic. His pupils shrank to the size of needles. He hurriedly turned his head and saw Zhuowen's scarlet-eyed fist flying towards him. Poochie. Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic felt a sharp pain in his chest when the fist landed on his back. He spat out a mouthful of blood and the origin energy shield in front of him suddenly became unstable. Then, the blood spear that was pressed against the origin energy shield instantly swept out and swept past Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic's neck, leaving behind a trail of blood. Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic's eyes widened in anger. He hadn't realized that he had died just like that. This was because the entire process from Zhuowen's attack to Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic's death only took 2 breaths of time. It was almost an instant kill. Plop. Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic's corpse fell from mid-air like a meteorite and smashed into the ground, stirring up a lot of dust. The hearts of countless onlookers pounded fiercely. Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic, a mid-stage Empyrean Venerate, had died just like that. Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic's strength was even more terrifying than Empyrean Venerate Whitebrow. It was unbelievable that he had died just like that. What? Ecliptic is dead. At this moment, Zhang Tianzuan had already arrived beside Lu Hantian and Elder Shi Yuan. He also heard the commotion around him and turned his head to look. He immediately saw Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic's corpse falling from mid-air. There was no sign of life. After killing Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic, Zhuowen's eyes were still as calm as an ancient well. There seemed to be no emotion in those blood-red eyes. The only emotion was endless killing. Die. With a low roar, Zhuowen turned into a blood-red light and swept towards Zhang Tianzuan at an extremely fast speed. That little bastard. Even Empyrean Venerate Ecliptic was killed by him. That damn bastard. After coming back to his senses, Zhang Tianzuan was so angry that his body trembled. If he remembered correctly, apart from him, the other 4 Empyrean Venerates of the imperial family had all been killed by Zhuowen. Although Empyrean Venerate Guanghan and Empyrean Venerate Xie had been severely injured by Moyan Wushang, they had all been killed by Zhuowen. To think that 4 of the 5 Empyrean Venerates of the imperial family had been killed by the same person. Furthermore, this person was a junior at the Supremacy Realm. As the leader of the 5 Empyrean Venerates, how could Zhang Tianzuan not be mad? Even you will be killed. The sound of something breaking through the air instantly approached. Zhuowen was expressionless. He waved his blood-red spear and rushed towards Zhang Tianzuan. A terrifying aura of blood permeated the air, as if the entire space had fallen into azure hell. "Little bastard, if I don't kill you, I won't be Xiang Tianzuan." Xiang Tianzuan roared angrily. He stomped his foot, and a terrifying aura crushed down like a mountain. A huge Xiang rose behind him. A Xiang illuminates the world. The Xiang rose, blooming with thousands of purple lights. These thousands of purple lights were like innumerable purple snakes, entangling Zhuowen, intending to completely bind Zhuowen. Break. In mid-air, Zhuowen twisted his waist, and his whole body rotated 360 degrees in the air. The blood-red spear in his hand turned into an arc of blood-red light, and the thousands of purple lights that swept towards him were completely defeated by this blood-red light. Whoosh! After breaking through the thousands of purple lights, Zhuo Wen was like a hot knife through butter as he rushed toward heavenly venerate Ziyang without slowing down. Xiang Tianzuan's face was gloomy. Zhuo Wen's strength was somewhat beyond his expectations. He roared angrily, and with a drag of his right hand, the huge Xiang suspended in the air was pulled by Xiang Tianzuan and smashed towards Zhuowen. Rumble. The Xiang's temperature was extremely hot. It smashed into Zhuowen like a fireball, causing Zhuowen's forward momentum to stagnate, and because of this, he was forced to retreat again and again. Not enough. Xiang Tianzuan snorted coldly, and his hands formed a seal. Suddenly, an even more blazing purple light swept out from his body, and then another Xiang slowly emerged. Two Xiang wheels overturn heaven and earth. When the second Xiang rose to the highest point, the huge Xiang followed closely behind the first Xiang and suddenly blasted towards Zhuowen. Rumble. When the second Xiang fell, the pressure on Zhuowen increased sharply. With a muffled groan, he could not help but retreat again and again, and a trace of blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. Suppress. Xiang Tianzuan roared angrily, and his right hand pressed down. The two Xiang wheels burst out with dazzling brilliance, intending to completely crush Zhuowen. Thump. 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 Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated step by step. Xiang Tianzuan was worthy of being a supreme master at the peak of the celestial master realm, and his strength was terrifying. After spitting out another mouthful of blood, Zhuowen roared and slapped the bronze coffin again. Suddenly, half of the coffin lid was opened, and an even more turbulent blood demon power poured out and poured into Zhuowen's body like rivers flowing into the sea. Sizzle. 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 The blood aura surrounding Zhuowen's body became denser, and Zhuowen's blood hair became thicker and thicker, and it kept growing. The blood hair that was originally draped over his shoulders had now reached his waist, making Zhuowen even more demonic now. The power contained in Zhuowen's body also increased exponentially. Break. With a roar, Zhuowen swung the blood spear, and countless blood-colored light pillars shot up into the sky. A terrifying power erupted, and the two Xiang wheels exploded. Chapter 876. Facing Emperor Qingxiang Tianzuan's pupils shrank to the size of needles as he stared at the incoming blood spear. He roared angrily as he waved his hands. Purple energy surged out and wrapped his hands in purple energy. "Block it for me." Xiang Tianzuan roared as he flung out his hands, which were wrapped in purple energy, in an attempt to grab hold of the blood spear. Clang. The blood-red light flashed, and the instant it neared the purple hands, it actually froze. However, Zhuo Wen's gaze was still filled with indifference. "You can't block it." Zhuo Wen's cold voice rang out as he gripped the handle of the blood spear with both hands and twisted it. The blood spear began to spin violently as countless blood spears shot out. Ah! Xiang Tianzuan let out a miserable howl as the blood spear continued to spin. His hands, which were wrapped in purple energy, were crushed by the terrifying blood energy of the blood spear. Thud. 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 Xiang Tianzuan retreated as his face turned as pale as snow. He stared in disbelief at the demonic youth with waist-length blood-red hair. What's going on? How did Zhuowen's strength suddenly become so terrifying? Even he, who was at the peak of the heavenly sovereign realm, had become so fragile in his hands. Die. After crushing Empyrean Ziyang's hands, Zhuo Wen's feet did not stop moving. He turned into a blood-red light and charged at Empyrean Ziyang again. The blood-red spear in his hand carried an indomitable aura. "No. Your Majesty Emperor Qing, save me." Zhang Tianzuan stared at the blood spear with a look of despair in his eyes. Zhuowen was too strong. He was so strong that he felt that it was unreal. It was impossible for such a terrifying power to come from a young supreme realm cultivator. Zhuowen, you dare to kill Zhang Tianzuan? At this moment, the Azure Emperor, who was using the contract scroll to refine the Black Dragon, also noticed the commotion, especially when he saw Zhuowen instantly killing Heavenly Master Huang Jiao and crushing Zhang Tianzuan's arms. Finally, a hint of emotion appeared in his eyes. At the same time, Emperor Qing struck out with his palm. Green energy gushed out and rolled wildly in the void. It turned into a green mountain that was thousands of feet tall and came crashing down on Zhuowen. Right now, Emperor Qing was at a critical moment in refining the Black Dragon, so he couldn't rush over to save Zhang Tianzuan. He could only use this attack, hoping to kill Zhuowen and save Zhang Tianzuan. Zhuowen, you are dead for sure. Now that the Azure the Arch has made his move, you will definitely die. Zhang Tianzuan's eyes lit up with excitement as he looked at the green mountain that was crashing down on him. He knew that he would be saved if the Azure the Arch made his move. As the terrifying pressure descended, Zhuowen, who was charging in midair, felt his body sink. He found it difficult to move, as if he was in a swamp. This was the Emperor's aura, the pressure of an Emperor realm expert. Kill. No one can stop me. Roaring to the sky, Zhuowen patted the coffin on his back with his right hand. In an instant, the coffin lid opened from half to 2/3. Endless blood qi swept out from the coffin like a whirlpool, completely enveloping Zhuowen's small figure. Sizzle. 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 Within the blood-red whirlpool, Zhuowen's eyes became even redder. His cheeks were covered with countless blood-red veins, and his blood-red hair, which was originally waist-length, grew crazily again, all the way to his buttocks. A sea of blood rolled out from the void. Zhuowen stomped his foot, and the countless blood-red whirlpools around him dissipated. Stepping on the sea of blood, he actually completely destroyed the powerful Emperor's aura that was descending on him. Rumble. The Cyan Mountain arrived in an instant and fell towards Zhuowen's head. Zhuowen pointed the tip of his spear and actually blasted it towards the huge falling mountain. This spear contained a monstrous sea of blood, a boundless will, and Zhuowen's boundless madness. Crack. A scene that left everyone dumbfounded happened. The surface of the green mountain formed by Emperor Qing's powerful attack started to crack. Moreover, the cracks were still spreading. Crack. In the end, the huge green mountain collapsed and turned into countless green light. Within the endless green light, a blood-red shadow swept out again. Its target was Zhang Tianzuan, who was not far away. The smile on Zhang Tianzuan's face completely froze, and his eyes were finally filled with endless fear. How is this possible? Even the Azure Theater's attack could not stop Zhuowen. How is this possible? Unfortunately, Zhang Tianzuan did not think for too long. The blood-red light flashed past his eyebrows, and then a wisp of blood flowed out from between his eyebrows. The expression on Zhang Tianzuan's face was completely frozen at that moment of fear. Plop. When Heavenly Venerate Zi Yang's corpse fell to the ground and made a loud noise, the surrounding people snapped out of their daze. Heavenly Master Huang Jiao and Zhang Tianzuan had been killed in front of them. Moreover, they had been killed so easily. What was even more incredible was that the Azure Theater's attack had been broken. All eyes were focused on the figure with blood-red hair that reached his buttocks. The young man in front of them had created a miracle by killing 5 heavenly masters as a mere supreme being. Such a magnificent feat was unprecedented. The Azure Theater's face was extremely ugly. He was also shocked by Zhuowen's terrifying combat strength, but he was even more heartbroken by the deaths of the 5 heavenly masters. These 5 celestial masters had been cultivated by Emperor Qing. Moreover, it had taken him many years to cultivate these 5 celestial masters. But now, they had all been killed by Zhuowen. This power does not belong to him at all. It's the power of a demon. I don't know what method he used to turn himself into a demon and obtain such a terrifying power. The Azure Theater's eyes were solemn. He could see Zhuowen's current state at a glance. It was a sign of turning into a demon. The deeper Zhuowen went into a demon, the more powerful the power he could obtain. Once he completely turned into a demon, the demon power would be completely stimulated and he would become an out-and-out demon who killed people like flies. Damn it. Why did he have to turn into a demon at this moment? I was so close to completely refining the black dragon. Thinking of this, the Azure Theacher's face turned ugly. Now that he had entered the critical moment of refining the dragon soul, Zhuowen had actually chosen to turn into a demon to obtain powerful power. This was simply beyond the Azure Theacher's expectations. At this moment, Zhuowen had already come to the side of Lu Hantian and Elder Shi Yuan. He clapped his right hand and took out a bronze paper kite from his spiritual ring. The bronze paper kite was the flying spiritual treasure that Lu Hantian had given him back then. Its speed was not slow and it was an excellent means of transportation for severely injured warriors like Lu Hantian and Elder Shi Yuan. Zhuowen's eyes were red as he forcefully suppressed the terrifying desire to kill. He said to Lu Hantian and Elder Shi Yuan in a deep voice, "Brother Hantian, Elder Shi Yuan, the two of you quickly get on the bronze paper kite and leave the imperial capital." Zhuowen, why did you choose to turn into a demon? Once you turn into a demon, your destiny will no longer be controlled by yourself. Instead, it will be dominated by the endless desire to kill in your mind. At that time, you will lose yourself and become a demon, Lu Hantian said in a low voice. I have no other choice. Let's leave quickly. I can't control the desire to kill anymore. Zhuowen roared and waved his right hand. Instantly, Lu Hantian and Elder Shi Yuan were wrapped up by Zhuowen and brought onto the bronze paper kite. Then, Zhuowen clapped his right hand on the bronze paper kite. With a high-pitched chirp, the bronze paper kite carried Lu Hantian and Elder Shi Yuan. It turned into a beam of green light and rushed out of the imperial capital. After the bronze paper kite had completely disappeared from sight, Zhuowen slowly turned around. His blood-red eyes stared at Emperor Qing, who was still refining Xiao He not far away. The Azure Emperor frowned as he sensed Zhuowen's murderous gaze. He felt a tinge of anxiety in his heart. Now that he was about to succeed in refining, Zhuowen was still lingering around. At the same time, Xiao He, who was originally weak, started to struggle with all her might. Dragon roars were heard continuously. Xiao He, wait for me. I'll let you out. Zhuowen muttered softly. He took a step forward and flew towards Emperor Qing. He was very fast. In just 2 breaths' time, he was near Emperor Qing. Emperor Qing, I'll kill you. As he spoke, Zhuowen's blood-red spear had already shot out. Boundless sharpness overflowed in all directions. The blood-red tip of the spear actually shot straight towards Emperor Qing's glabella. It contained a dense and indomitable aura. Damn it. In 5 breaths' time, I will be able to refine this dragon soul completely. Damn it. Zhuowen, you bastard. Zhuowen's spear was even more terrifying than before. Especially now that Zhuowen had turned into a demon, his strength had reached the first level of the martial emperor realm. Even Emperor Qing didn't dare to stand still and let Zhuowen attack him. With a furious roar, the Azure Emperor retreated with an indignant expression. He even cursed, which was a rare sight. Swoosh. Zhuowen came in front of Xiao He and pushed out with his right palm. A powerful force was released and the blood runes that surrounded Xiao He's body were shattered by Zhuowen's powerful palm. Roar. After breaking free from the blood runes, Xiao He's huge dragon body gradually shrank. Finally, he turned into a palm-sized Xiao He. However, the little black dog was already on the verge of death. Its black spiritual body had become illusory and lusterless, and its aura was extremely weak. Xiao He slowly landed on Zhuowen's shoulder. He forced a smile and said in a low voice, I didn't expect you to use the blood inheritance seal. Are you tired of living? Zhuowen shook his head and said, do you think I can tolerate you being refined by Emperor Qing? You are my partner. I will not let you be enslaved by Emperor Qing. So what if you become a demon? After all, there are times when you can't control yourself. Xiao He, you have used too much of your origin energy. Go back to the spiritual ring first. Zhuowen suddenly said. Xiao He was stunned. He said hesitantly, Zhuowen, your sea of consciousness. It has been destroyed. Zhuowen said softly. Previously, Emperor Qing's strength was too strong. Moreover, he had stirred up Zhuowen's sea of consciousness without restraint. Even though Zhuowen's sea of consciousness was strong, it could not withstand the torment. Now, it was basically destroyed. Chapter 877. 9-star alignment. Looking at the young man with blood-red eyes and blood-red hair, Xiao He suddenly realized that the young man in front of her seemed to be a completely different person from Zhuowen. After becoming a demon, Zhuowen had become much colder. It was an attitude that looked at everything as if they were nothing. Xiao He, leave everything to me. Go into the spirit ring first. Zhuowen turned his head and a smile appeared on his face. However, at this moment, Zhuowen's eyes were scarlet red and his cheeks were covered with ferocious veins. This made Zhuowen appear rather ferocious and strange. Looking at the smile on Zhuowen's face, Xiao He suddenly felt a lump in her throat. The young man in front of her had become unrecognizable because he had become a demon. Moreover, Xiao He also knew that Zhuowen was currently enduring inhumane torture and pain. Zhuowen, be careful. Xiao He opened her mouth but did not know what to say. However, her black eyes were already filled with mist. In the end, she could only spit out this sentence. Whoosh! Xiao He turned into a black light and entered Zhuowen's spirit ring. Huff! Letting out a light breath, Zhuowen slowly raised his head and stared at the flustered and exasperated Emperor Qing in front of him. The killing intent in his eyes became even more intense and the blood-red color in his eyes became even deeper. Little bastard! Whether or not you have become a demon today, you will still die. Moreover, you will die in an extremely ugly manner. Emperor Qing roared in exasperation. He had almost completely refined Xiao He and made her his dragon soul. However, that bastard Zhuowen had actually ruined all his plans at the crucial moment. Now, not only had he failed to obtain the dragon soul, but the contract scroll had also been completely destroyed because of his failure to refine it. In other words, even if he captured Zhuowen now and took out the dragon soul that was hiding in Zhuowen's spirit ring, he would not be able to graft the dragon soul onto himself. After all, the contract scroll was so precious, and the Lotus Supreme the Arch had only obtained it by chance. He only had one copy. The person who had caused all this was this damned Zhuowen. At this moment, the Azure Emperor wished he could chop Zhuowen into pieces. Zhuowen's eyes were cold and bloodthirsty as he stared at the Azure Emperor. With a roar, he stomped on the ground, and a terrifying power spread out. With him as the center, the ground within dozens of miles started to shake violently. Then, the surrounding ground started to crack, and countless gravel floated up, forming an extremely terrifying gravel tornado. Zhuowen's demonic blood-red hair danced in the wild wind. Following which, Zhuowen shot towards the Azure the Arch like an arrow. Wherever he passed, the ground cracked, forming a moat-like tunnel. Kill! Emperor Qing squinted his eyes and stomped his foot. 9 huge pits appeared on the ground and 9 green stars floated in the sky from the 9 pits. You're overestimating yourself. I will let you know that. So what if you've become a demon? You are still no match for me. With that, the Azure Emperor waved his hands, and the 9 green stars turned into 9 rays of green light that shot towards Zhuowen. Bang! The nearest star arrived in front of Zhuowen in an instant and made close contact with Zhuowen. Zhuowen roared angrily and used his long spear to block in front of him. Then, the green star descended and blasted on the blood spear. The powerful force caused Zhuowen's forward momentum to stop, and he even involuntarily took a few steps back. 9-star alignment. The Azure Emperor stomped his foot again, and the other 8 green stars flew over together. One after another, they blocked the first star, forming a 9-star alignment. In an instant, the superimposed power of the 9 stars increased by more than 9 times. Thump! 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 In front of the 9 huge stars, Zhuowen's figure seemed so small, like an ant. He retreated step by step. The blood spear was placed in front of Zhuowen's hands. Under the powerful force of the 9 stars, Zhuowen roared angrily, and the veins on his forehead popped out. An ant will always be an ant. Zhuowen, you are not qualified to be my opponent. You can't even block my 9-star alignment, and you still want to resist me? The Azure Emperor leaped and stepped on the star at the top of the 9-star alignment. He looked down at Zhuowen, who was at the bottom, and his eyes were full of arrogance. However, an ant like you actually dared to destroy the best opportunity for me to refine the dragon soul. Therefore, you deserve to die. You deserve to be killed. With that, the Azure Emperor's eyes grew colder. He stomped his foot, and a terrifying force filled the 9-star alignment. Zhuowen groaned as he was suppressed by the 9-star alignment. He almost couldn't breathe and spat out a mouthful of blood. Boom! The Azure Emperor lifted his foot again and stomped on the star. The pressure of the 9-star alignment increased sharply, and Zhuowen's knees were bent. He almost knelt on the ground, and his face turned pale. You are just a pitiful ant. Do you think you can go against me just because you can borrow the power of the blood demon? Do you think you can go against me even if you have turned into a demon? It is a pity that you have made a big mistake. Even if you borrow the power of the blood demon, you are still not my opponent. With that, the Azure Emperor stomped on the star again, and the 9-star alignment made a cracking sound. Zhuowen couldn't withstand such a terrifying force. He knelt on the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. This is the last blow. Before you die, I want you to remember that you need to know your own limits. Any actions that overestimate yourself will cause you to die without a burial ground. With that, the Azure Emperor lifted his right foot for the last time and stomped on the 9-star alignment. A heavenly force exploded within the 9-star alignment, and Zhuowen was completely submerged by the 9-star alignment. However, when Zhuowen was submerged, his crimson eyes became extremely demonic. What the Azure Emperor didn't notice was that Zhuowen had completely opened the bronze coffin at that moment. At that moment, Zhuowen's figure could no longer be seen at the bottom of the 9-star alignment. The power contained in the 3 stomps of the Azure Emperor was too terrifying. Even if Zhuowen had turned into a demon, he couldn't withstand it. It seems that even if Zhuowen has turned into a demon, he is still no match for the Azure Emperor. Didn't you see the battle between His Majesty the Azure Emperor and Lu Hantian? After all, Lu Hantian is also a first-level martial emperor, but he is still no match for His Majesty the Azure Emperor. Therefore, His Majesty the Azure Emperor is at least a second-level martial emperor. In the Imperial Power Realm, a difference of 1 level is like heaven and earth. However, Zhuowen is indeed powerful. He is clearly a junior at the martial emperor realm, but he was actually able to kill the 5 heavenly venerables of the imperial family. It's too terrifying. If this kid can grow up, it is entirely possible for him to advance to the imperial power realm. Seeing Zhuowen completely submerged in the 9-star alignment, the surrounding cultivators shook their heads and sighed. Although Zhuowen had been suppressed to death by the Azure Emperor, they couldn't help but admit that his talent was extremely terrifying. During the Great War of the 9 counties, Zhuowen was just an unknown genius from the 8 counties. Later on, he stood out in the ranking battle and almost defeated Huangfu Wudao in the Heavenly Marquis battle. From then on, his name shook the imperial capital. After that, many things happened, and Zhuowen disappeared for unknown reasons. After more than a month, Zhuowen returned in a powerful manner, causing chaos in the imperial capital's dungeon and killing countless guards. Even the 5 heavenly venerables of the imperial family had fallen because of him. In the eyes of outsiders, this series of magnificent feats was simply a miracle, but Zhuowen had done it all. Among the countless spectating cultivators, there were also a few geniuses who were in the top 10 of the ranking battle, including Guosheng, Zhu Bai, Murong Zhon, Grand Lily, and some other talented juniors. Their gazes were more complicated than the others. To them, the cultivators of the Xuanzuan realm were already existences that they could only look up to. However, Zhuowen had now killed 5 heavenly venerables, and Xiang Tianzuan was even at the peak of the heavenly venerate realm. They had to admit that Zhuowen was really too abnormal. Unknowingly, the gap between Zhuowen and them had become wider and wider, so much so that they could only look at his back. Among them, the one with the most complicated expression was none other than Grand Lily. After she had been released by Zhuowen, she had rushed back to the Grand Lily clan and completely stabilized the somewhat chaotic Grand Lily clan. She knew that her father, Grand Haohai, would definitely not be able to survive. In order to avenge Grand Haohai, Grand Lily had been cultivating day and night during this period of time. Her goal was to catch up to Zhuowen in terms of cultivation. Finally, the heavens did not disappoint those who worked hard. Recently, Grand Lily's cultivation had successfully broken through to the initial stage of the Xuanzuan realm. She also knew that her cultivation was getting closer and closer to Zhuowen's, and she was also one step closer to taking revenge. However, what had happened in the Imperial City today had completely shattered Grand Lily's confidence. On this night that was destined to not be peaceful, Zhuowen had suddenly appeared in the Imperial City's dungeon. The strength that he had unleashed had shocked Grand Lily, especially when she had seen Zhuowen kill Heavenly Venerate Huang Jiao and Xiang Tianzuan. Her heart had almost jumped out of her chest, and her face had turned deathly pale. It was only then that she realized that the gap between her and Zhuowen had not narrowed. Instead, it had widened and the gap had become wider and wider. She had just broken through to Mystique Venerate, but Zhuowen was already able to kill Heavenly Venerate powerhouses. This gap was not something that could be made up with hard work and cultivation. When she recalled her arrogant behavior in front of Zhuowen, Grand Lily suddenly felt that she had been exceptionally laughable at that time. Her fiancé, Zhuowen, whom she had looked down on back then, had not only wreaked havoc in the Imperial City's dungeon today and killed 5 Heavenly Venerates, but even the Lotus Emperor had personally taken action to capture him. How glorious and powerful was this? Taking a deep breath, Grand Lily calmed herself down. Her expression returned to normal as she muttered faintly, "No matter how terrifyingly talented this Zhuowen is or how powerful he is, he's already dead. In the future, Zhuowen will soon be forgotten." Grand Lily understood the rules of this mainland better than Zhuowen. The loser would never have the right to be remembered by others because that was the right of the winner. Immediately, become a demon. Just as the surrounding people were shaking their heads and sighing, a calm and indifferent voice slowly rang out from the underground of the 9-star pearl. Then, a monstrous blood aura burst out from the bottom. Rumble. Chapter 878. The Mysterious Man Boom. Boom. Earth-shattering explosions resounded continuously. Subsequently, the powerful and terrifying 9-star alignment beneath Emperor Qing's feet was completely shattered into countless green fragments by the terrifying explosive force. Boom. Boom. Emperor Qing's pupils shrank. The moment the 9-star alignment shattered, he took a few steps back and retreated a few hundred meters. He looked through the countless green fragments and stared at the blood-red figure at the bottom. This bastard's strength can actually increase. Emperor Qing frowned and muttered in surprise. Boom. Under the countless green fragments, an endless amount of blood aura rose up and turned into a huge blood-red figure. This blood-red figure looked blurry and was surrounded by a thick bloody aura. This bloody aura contained the ultimate killing and hatred in the world. Under the blood-red figure, a blood-red figure slowly walked out. This person's blood-red hair fell to his feet. His eyes were red and his entire face was covered with blood-red veins. He looked extremely ferocious and terrifying. Beside this figure, a large bronze coffin was pressed against the ground. At this moment, the lid of the coffin had been completely opened by this figure, and a terrifying smell of blood permeated the air. This smell of blood was basically absorbed by this figure's body. This is Zhuowen. How did Zhuowen become stronger again? Even Emperor Qing's 9-star alignment could not suppress him. Looking at the countless green fragments in the sky, as well as the blood-red figure under the green fragments, many of the surrounding warriors were shocked. Zhuowen's strength had truly exceeded everyone's expectations. Emperor Qing. Kill. Raising his head slightly, Zhuowen stared at Emperor Qing in the sky. He took a step forward and turned into a blood-red figure that swept towards Emperor Qing. He swung the blood-red spear in his hand and a terrifying bloody aura poured out. It actually cut through the sky and left a huge spatial rift that stretched across the sky. Hiss. Hiss. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air as they looked at Zhuowen, who was able to create such a terrifying force with a casual swing of his bloody spear. This kid was too terrifying. Just a casual strike was able to cause such terrifying destruction. It truly shocked everyone's hearts. The Lotus Theater's eyes darkened. He pressed down with his right hand, and green energy surged out, trying to block the blood-colored energy that streaked across the sky. Bang! As the two forces of energy collided, a bright light exploded in the sky. Then, under the horrified gazes of the Azure Theater's people, the Azure the Arch retreated a few hundred steps before he could stabilize himself. The Azure the Arch was defeated? Zhuowen's strength has actually become so strong. An uproar continued to resound. The Qing Emperor, on the other hand, had a gloomy look in his eyes. At this moment, the power that Zhuowen was displaying made even him somewhat fearful, especially when he saw those cold and emotionless blood-red eyes. The Qing Emperor felt a trace of fear in his heart. There was no doubt that he had completely turned into a demon. He had absorbed all the power of the blood demon into his body, causing his strength to increase by 1,000 times. This guy is really crazy. He actually absorbed all of the blood demon's power into himself. He's simply playing with fire, the Azure Emperor mumbled. There was a tinge of fear in his voice. Kill! A thunderous roar resounded. Zhuowen instantly appeared in front of the Qing Emperor. He raised his right hand, and the blood-red spear shot towards the Qing Emperor's vital point like a maggot in a corpse. The Qing Emperor's eyes narrowed. He snorted coldly, and his hands were filled with green energy. He met the attack fearlessly. Rumble. Suddenly, the two of them started to fight in the sky. The blood-red and green figures almost covered the entire sky. They were so fast that no one could recognize who was who. The entire sky was filled with the continuous sounds of terrifying blows. The battle between the two of them had far exceeded the scope of the Four Supremes realm. The Qing Emperor was a powerful existence in the Second Heaven Emperor realm. Although Zhuowen was only in the Supremes realm, he did not hesitate to turn into a demon to borrow all of the blood demon's power. He temporarily obtained the powerful strength of the Emperor realm. Boom! An earth-shattering voice exploded in the void. Then, the blood-red figure and the cyan figure both retreated hundreds of meters away, facing each other from afar. The Qing Emperor narrowed his eyes and stared coldly at Zhuowen, who had long blood-red hair. He said, "How pitiful. After becoming a demon, you are neither human nor ghost. Is this the choice of an ant like you? Kill." Zhuowen did not reply. To be exact, his consciousness had long been eroded by the endless slaughter. At this moment, he could not maintain any intelligence at all. Even speaking had become abnormally difficult. The Lotus Emperor snorted coldly. He waved his right hand and took out a scroll. Then, the scroll expanded from the size of a palm to a few hundred feet in size. The huge scroll slowly opened and wisps of peach blossoms floated out. It was the Lotus Theater's natal emperor weapon, the Peach Blossom Origin Diagram. The Peach Blossom Temple in the Peach Blossom Cove, the Peach Blossom Immortal in the Peach Blossom Temple. The Peach Blossom Immortal planted peach trees and plucked peach blossoms to exchange for wine money. Once the Peach Blossom Origin Diagram opened, countless peach blossoms floated out. Then, countless peach blossom tree shadows spread out in the surroundings and surrounded Zhuowen. Boom! 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 Zhuowen waved the blood-red spear in his right hand. Terrifying blood-red energy turned into a huge whirlpool that swept out, wanting to destroy the countless peach blossom tree shadows around him. Unfortunately, although Zhuowen's blood-red spear was very powerful, the whirlpool that it released destroyed countless peach blossom tree shadows around him. However, the peach blossom tree shadows seemed to be endless. Once they were destroyed, they would regrow and form new peach blossom tree shadows. Standing on the Peach Blossom Origin Diagram, the Lotus Emperor stared coldly at Zhuowen and said indifferently, "The peach blossom tree formation is a formation of all illusions. Zhuowen, you, who have become a demon, will not be able to break it." After saying that, the Cyan Emperor hid in the shadow of the peach blossom tree and quietly approached Zhuowen. The moment Zhuowen attacked, the Cyan Emperor made his move. With a push of his right hand, the Cyan Emperor slapped Zhuowen's back. Fart! Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. Caught off guard, Zhuowen was directly hit by the palm and staggered. Zhuowen roared angrily. He swung his blood-red spear and rushed back, wanting to kill the Lotus Emperor who had launched a sneak attack. Unfortunately, the Lotus Emperor once again hid in the peach blossom tree shadows, and Zhuowen's attack only destroyed the tree shadows behind him. Boom, 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 boom. Within the peach blossom tree shadows, the Lotus Emperor was like a fish in water. He moved freely and attacked again and again, killing Zhuowen with his palms, causing Zhuowen's injuries to worsen. Under the Lotus Emperor's sneak attacks, Zhuowen became weaker and weaker. Although his strength had increased by leaps and bounds with the help of the Blood Demon's power, it was a pity that the Blood Demon's power was very heterogeneous, and Zhuowen's cultivation level was too low. There was too little that he could use. An ant will always be an ant. It's better for you to die for me. The Lotus Emperor's indifferent voice came from behind Zhuowen again. Zhuowen roared and stabbed out with his blood-red spear. However, the Lotus Emperor caught it with his palm, causing Zhuowen to be unable to move at all. After so many sneak attacks by the Lotus Emperor, Zhuowen had become extremely weak. The power that he used now was not a threat to the Lotus Emperor at all. The Lotus Emperor snatched the blood-red spear and struck out with his right palm again, directly hitting Zhuowen's chest. Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood and fell down like a meteorite. 9 stars transform into a dragon. I'll let you die a quick death. The Lotus Emperor's indifferent voice rang out. He formed a seal with his hands and 9 more green stars descended from the 9 heavens. Under the Lotus Emperor's power, the 9 stars transformed into a green dragon that was almost 1,000 feet long. Roar! The huge green dragon swooped down and bit at Zhuowen's body, wanting to devour him completely. However, just as the huge green dragon was about to devour Zhuowen, a strange black light came from afar and pierced through the green dragon's glabella. Roar! The green dragon let out a sorrowful cry and its dragon body collapsed instantly, turning into countless green lights. Who is it? The Lotus Emperor's eyes turned grave as he looked at the green dragon that had collapsed instantly. The power that this black light contained was terrifying. It could actually destroy his 9 stars dragon transformation instantly. How could the Lotus Emperor not be shocked? Lotus Emperor, that's enough. Don't you think that killing Zhuowen is too much? An indifferent voice rang out from all directions. Then, a figure slowly stepped out from the huge abyss formed by the collapse of the dungeon. The sound of chains clanging could be heard from this figure. Swoosh, swoosh. Everyone's gazes gathered on the figure in the abyss. No one had expected that there would be another person in the dungeon. When this figure finally appeared in front of everyone, the person's face was finally revealed to everyone. This person was in his 30s and was wearing a prison uniform. His entire body was bound by black chains, but at this moment, these black chains were all broken. Although this person looked like a prisoner, his eyes were extremely bright, shining like the stars in the sky. Although his face was not very handsome, it was extremely pleasing to the eye. If one looked carefully, one would realize that this person was somewhat similar to Zhuowen, especially his eyes, which seemed to be carved out of the same mold as Zhuowen's. This person stepped out of the abyss, but his gaze was fixed on Zhuowen's figure, which was falling from the sky. There was a trace of unknown emotion in his eyes. Has he gone mad? This child is as stubborn as his mother, he muttered to himself. This mysterious person softly muttered to himself. He beckoned with his right hand and a wisp of dark black energy rushed out and caught the falling Zhuowen. After which, he took the opportunity to bring the latter to his side. You want to take this little bastard away? Do you think it's possible? Seeing the intention of the mysterious person, Lotus Emperor shouted and rushed toward Zhuowen. He pressed his right hand, and a green energy surged out and turned into a huge palm. He grabbed Zhuowen and tried to pull Zhuowen back. Get lost! The mysterious person shouted coldly. With a wave of his sleeve, the dark black energy wrapped around Zhuowen's body exploded and directly shattered the green palm. Moreover, the aftermath of the energy swept out and rushed toward Lotus Emperor. Bang! Lotus Emperor staggered and actually retreated. He stared at the mysterious person who had suddenly appeared and said in a deep voice, "How is this possible? How did you break through so quickly? Your strength has reached such a level." Chapter 879. My name is Long Xiaotian. Zhuowen, who was wrapped in the dark energy, turned into a streak of light and landed beside the mysterious man. Looking at Zhuowen, who was wrapped in the dark energy, with scarlet eyes, blood-red hair, and a face covered in veins, the mysterious man sighed. "The power of the blood demon?" The mysterious man muttered softly. With a wave of his right hand, the bronze coffin that was scattered nearby automatically flew into his hand. Boom! The bronze coffin landed heavily in front of him. Following which, the mysterious man pointed with his right hand and pointed at the space between Zhuowen's eyebrows. Immediately, the blood-red energy that Zhuowen had absorbed was drawn out by the mysterious man. CI. The mysterious man's left hand was not slow either. He slapped the bronze coffin and the blood-red energy that had been drawn out by Zhuowen was continuously drawn into the bronze coffin. At this moment, Zhuowen was in a delirious state. Seeing that the mysterious man was actually absorbing his blood-red energy, he let out a beast-like roar from his throat. He wanted to pounce over and tear the mysterious man to shreds. However, the mysterious man's strength far surpassed Zhuowen's. The dark energy that surrounded Zhuowen was extremely powerful. No matter how hard Zhuowen struggled, he was unable to break free. As the blood-red energy was continuously drawn out, Zhuowen became increasingly weak. The blood-red color in his eyes also gradually dimmed, and the veins on his face also gradually disappeared. When the mysterious man withdrew his sword finger, the blood demon's power that had filled Zhuowen's body was completely drawn out by the mysterious man and sealed back into the bronze coffin. The mysterious man sighed and closed the bronze coffin. However, his gaze was fixed on Zhuowen. No one knew what he was thinking. At that moment, Zhuowen had completely recovered. He no longer had the terrifying appearance of being possessed by a demon. Instead, he had returned to his original state. Poochie. After spitting out a mouthful of blood, Zhuowen's face was incomparably pale. Without the support of the blood demon, Zhuowen's entire body was weak and powerless. The injuries on his body also became even more prominent. Barely propping himself up, Zhuowen also saw the middle-aged man covered in chains in front of him. He asked with a hoarse voice, "Who are you?" For some reason, he felt a sense of familiarity from the middle-aged man in front of him. It was a sense of familiarity that came from the depths of his bloodline. "My name is Long Xiaotian. I also have another name, Shui Xiaotian. My son, his name is Zhuowen." A gentle smile appeared on the middle-aged man's face as he stared at Zhuowen quietly, giving off a refreshing feeling. Boom! Hearing this, Zhuowen felt a rumble in his mind. The mysterious man in front of him was actually Zhuowen's biological father, Shui Xiaotian. As expected. "Actually, when I saw the nether dragon in the abyss, I knew that you were very likely my father, but I wasn't sure. Because according to the Rika ancestral teachings, my father, Long Xiaotian's dragon soul is not a nether dragon, but a two-headed nether dragon." After calming down, Zhuowen's mood also calmed down a lot. He knew that the man in front of him was his father, Shui Xiaotian. The intimacy in their bloodline couldn't be faked. It was a mutual response that originated from their bloodline. "That's right. My dragon soul is indeed a two-headed nether dragon." Shui Xiaotian didn't deny it. With a stomp of his foot, two terrifying dragon roars came from the abyss behind him. Then, two nether dragons that were hundreds of feet long soared into the sky and quietly floated behind Shui Xiaotian. A two-headed nether dragon can split into two, and can also merge into one. At this point, the two nether dragons suddenly intertwined with each other. In a dark light, they merged into one and turned into a two-headed dragon that was thousands of feet long. This was Shui Xiaotian's true dragon soul, the two-headed nether dragon. Shui Xiaotian stretched out his right hand and gently rubbed Zhuowen's head. He smiled and said, "Zhuowen, I didn't expect you to have already grown so big. For the past 20 years, I haven't fulfilled my responsibilities as a father. I'm really guilty. Do you blame me?" Feeling the warmth of Shui Xiaotian's broad palm, Zhuowen felt a strange feeling in his heart. At the same time, he also felt a sense of warmth. Surprisingly, facing his father, whom he hadn't seen for more than 20 years, Zhuowen felt exceptionally calm. Shaking his head, Zhuowen smiled faintly and said, "It's difficult for a baby eagle to spread its wings and soar above the 9 heavens. Only by spreading its wings on its own can it truly learn how to fly and soar above the horizon. Father, I'm no longer a child. How can I blame you? Furthermore, I know that you had no choice. You didn't do it on purpose. What reason do I have to blame you for? Zhuo Xiaotian's eyes narrowed. He laughed and said, Haha, well said. You're indeed my son. You have such awareness. No wonder you have such a cultivation at such a young age. At this moment, the Lotus Supreme the Arch was 5 kilometers away from the abyss. He stared coldly at Zhuo Xiaotian and Zhuowen and said, Zhuo Xiaotian, have you forgotten the promise we made back then? How dare you leave the 18th level and come to this abyss? How dare you? Zhuo Xiaotian's smile faded. He turned to look at the Lotus Supreme the Arch and said calmly, Promise? You're already trying to kill my son, and you're talking to me about a so-called promise? Lotus Supreme the Arch, is it really good to be as shameless as you? Haha. Shameless? You made that promise in front of me and Xiao. Are you going to break it? The Lotus Supreme the Arch replied coldly, Break it? It was obviously you who was heartless first. I had already agreed to enter the 18th level of the dungeon, but in order to prevent me from escaping, you and those old farts of the Burning Heaven sect set up a forbidden array 10 kilometers around the dungeon. Zhuo Xiaotian's eyes became colder and colder. Hearing the conversation between the Lotus Supreme the Arch and Zhuo Xiaotian, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a thoughtful look. It seemed that there was another secret between the Lotus Supreme the Arch and Zhuo Xiaotian, and it even involved the Burning Heaven sect. And who was this Xiao they were talking about? Could it be that she was Zhuowen's mother? Father, who is my mother? Where is she now? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Zhuo Xiaotian's face stiffened and a trace of sadness appeared in his eyes. He sighed and said, Your mother's name is Feng Xiao. She. Now is not the time for you to know. When the time comes, I will tell you. Looking deeply at Zhuowen in front of him, the sadness in Zhuo Xiaotian's eyes grew stronger and stronger, as if he was recalling something unbearable. Looking at Zhuo Xiaotian's appearance, the doubts in Zhuo Xiaotian's heart grew even stronger. Why did Zhuo Xiaotian reveal such a sad expression when mentioning his mother? Why couldn't he know the whereabouts of his mother now? Humph. This emperor did that back then just to be safe. After all, you are a dragon soul martial artist. Your talent is too terrifying, and your cultivation progress is extremely fast. Once your strength reaches the emperor realm, even this emperor may not be your opponent. The Lotus Supreme the Arch said coldly. In the end, you are afraid. Zhuo Xiaotian sneered. Humph. No matter how reasonable your reason is, you still left the 18th floor and violated the original agreement. Therefore, this emperor had no choice but to use the forbidden array to completely seal you. Don't even think about coming out for the rest of your life. With that, the Lotus Supreme the Arch waved his right hand, and a fiery red light suddenly swept out from his hand. Upon closer inspection, this light was actually a fiery red token. Burning Sky token? Looks like those old farts from back then still had something up their sleeves. Zhuo Xiaotian immediately recognized the token used by Emperor Qing and exclaimed in a low voice. As soon as this fiery red token appeared, a monstrous pillar of fire erupted, soaring into the sky, straight into the clouds. The pillar of light gradually dissipated, and 2 old men in fiery red robes stepped out. These 2 old men were wearing fiery red robes, and the surface of their robes was painted with lifelike flame patterns. What was even more terrifying was that the aura of these 2 old men was actually not weaker than the Lotus Supreme the Arch. In other words, these 2 old men were also Emperor Realm experts. Hiss. 2 Emperor Realm experts appeared all of a sudden? How did the Lotus Supreme the Arch do it? Looking at this lineup, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. It was too terrifying. An Emperor Realm expert was already earth-shattering to everyone, but now, 2 had appeared all of a sudden. Adding the Lotus Supreme the Arch, there were 3. This was too shocking. The 2 old men frowned slightly, and there was a trace of confusion in their eyes. They looked around and immediately looked at the Lotus Supreme the Arch, so it's Elder Qingji. Why did you use the Burning Sky token to summon us? The Lotus Supreme the Arch cupped his hands and said politely, Elders Fen Ju and Fen Ri, that Zhuo Xiaotian ignored the agreement and actually forced his way out of the 18th floor of the dungeon. Now, Qingji has invited the two of you here mainly to resolve this matter. This bastard Zhuo Xiaotian actually dares to break the agreement. The two old men stared at him. Naturally, they also noticed Zhuo Xiaotian, who was beside the abyss below. Their gazes became extremely cold. Who are these two old men? Zhuowen frowned, but his heart was shaken. This Lotus Supreme the Arch actually had so many tricks up his sleeves, to actually summon two more Emperor Realm experts. These two old men are Elder Fen Ju and Elder Fen Ri of the Burning Heaven sect. Zhuo Xiaotian replied solemnly. Elders of the Burning Heaven sect. Then the two of them should be in the southern wilderness. Why did they suddenly descend to the eastern lands Azure Profound Empire? Zhuowen still asked in confusion. Zhuo Xiaotian explained patiently, the Burning Heaven token that the Lotus Supreme the Arch used just now contains an extremely powerful great teleportation formation. This formation can teleport a distance of 1,000,000 miles, which is enough to teleport the two elders of the Burning Heaven sect to the location of the token. 1,000,000 miles? It's actually that far? Hearing this, Zhuowen's gaze focused, and his heart revealed a look of shock. This Burning Heaven token was so terrifying, it could actually teleport 1,000,000 miles, it was probably an extremely precious item. Zhuowen, it's not good to stay here for long. When Fen Ju and Fen Ri want to use the Great Forbidden Formation to seal me, I will teleport you out of the Imperial capital. Father believes that with your talent, you will be able to surpass the Lotus Supreme the Arch in a few years. Rika will rely on you to revive. Zhuo Xiaotian suddenly said seriously. What about you? Zhuowen frowned. Chapter 880. The Haunting Cyan Emperor. Hearing this, Zhuowen frowned. Why did his father say that? Why would his mother be in danger if he left this place? Zhuowen could feel that Zhuo Xiaotian's aura was much stronger than Cyan Emperor's. It would not be difficult for him to break free from this place, but Zhuo Xiaotian did not, or rather, did not leave the 5-kilometer radius of the Forbidden Formation. Zhuowen could not help but think of the agreement between Zhuo Xiaotian and Cyan Emperor. Zhuowen knew that Zhuo Xiaotian had great strength, but he did not want to leave the 18th floor of the dungeon. It was probably related to the so-called agreement, and this agreement must be related to his mother, Feng Xiao. Father, why don't you leave with me? With your strength, leaving this place shouldn't be a problem. Zhuowen said somewhat anxiously. Zhuo Xiaotian smiled bitterly. Father has no choice but to stay here. This matter concerns your mother's safety, so father must stay here. Is it because of the agreement from back then? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Cyan Emperor's eyes flickered as he nodded. You are very smart. This matter is indeed related to the agreement from back then. What exactly is the agreement? You clearly have the strength, but you refuse to leave. Where exactly is my mother? How is she? Zhuowen was rather anxious. Zhuo Xiaotian had hidden too many things from him. He had to find out. Zhuo Xiaotian quietly stared at Zhuowen, shook his head and said, You are too weak. It is not a good thing to let you know about these things in advance. If one day, you can successfully advance to the Emperor realm, father will naturally tell you. But now, you cannot know. Whoosh whoosh. Two sounds of breaking through the air flew over. The two great elders, Fen Ju and Fen Ri, arrived 5 kilometers away from the abyss. They looked down at Zhuo Xiaotian with indifference in their eyes. Zhuo Xiaotian, you violated the agreement from back then, so the two of us had no choice but to use the Forbidden Formation on you. You should have no complaints about this, right? Zhuo Xiaotian indifferently looked up at Fen Ju and Fen Ri, as well as Cyan Emperor, who was following behind the two elders of the Burning Heaven sect. A trace of ridicule hung at the corner of his mouth as he said, No need to be hypocritical. The Burning Heaven insignia in Cyan Emperor's hands was given by the two of you, right? Since you've already become a whore, why do you still need a monument to your chastity? I'm afraid that when you set up the restrictive spell formation, you already planned to seal me completely. It's just that I didn't have enough reason before, but now I do. Hearing this, the gazes of the two great elders, Fen Ju and Fen Ri, instantly became extremely gloomy. With a cold snort, they said, "No matter what you say, you can't escape the fate of being sealed." As they spoke, the two elders looked at each other and formed a seal with both hands. Immediately, the surrounding air became scorching hot, as if it was on fire. It was quite terrifying. Forbidden spell formation. Activate. With a low shout, Fenju and Fenri's hand gestures changed. Waves of fiery red energy surged out, forming thousands of wisps of flame that adhered to the forbidden spell formation 5 kilometers away from the abyss. The forbidden spell formation had been set up around this dungeon more than 20 years ago. Its purpose was to prevent Zhuo Xiaotian from escaping. However, the forbidden spell formation that was set up back then was in an inactive state, so its power was not completely displayed. Today, Fenju and Fenri planned to completely activate this inactivated forbidden formation and completely imprison Zhuo Xiaotian within the 18th floor of the dungeon, so that Zhuo Xiaotian would never see the light of day for the rest of his life. Looking at the actions of Fenju and Fenri, Zhuo Xiaotian's gaze was as calm as water. He did not stop them at all. Then, his gaze landed on Zhuowen as he said, "Zhuowen, if you want to participate in this matter, your strength is not enough. Wait until your strength reaches the Emperor realm before you have the qualifications to participate in this matter. Father will first send you out of this place. What you need to do now is not to know the truth of what happened back then, but to continuously increase your own cultivation. Once your strength has reached a certain level, you will be able to help Father. I am looking forward to that day." Zhuo Xiaotian suddenly smiled. His right hand grabbed at the air, and a dark black star descended from the 9th heaven, landing right in front of Zhuowen. Then, Zhuo Xiaotian's right hand pressed against Zhuowen's back. A dark black energy was spat out, enveloping Zhuowen's entire body. "Zhuowen, this star can bring you out of the imperial capital. Your body contains Father's power. You can use this power to control the rise and fall of this star. The rest of the journey can only be left to you alone." Zhuowen stared at the middle-aged man in front of him and clenched his fists tightly. He knew that all of this was because he was too weak. Otherwise, it would be impossible for Zhuo Xiaotian to not tell him what happened back then, and even more so, he would not be forced into such a sorry state by Emperor Qing, like a stray dog. At the same time, Zhuo Xiaotian's right hand smashed onto the star. Immediately, the dark black star turned into a sharp dark light, rising towards the sky at an extremely fast speed. "Zhuo Xiaotian, what are you trying to do? You actually want to bring someone out of the forbidden spell formation? Don't even think about it. This person and you will be trapped here forever." Fenju and Fenri naturally saw Zhuo Xiaotian's every move. With a cold snort, they actually leaped up at the same time and pounced towards the sky, wanting to stop Zhuowen, who was called Xing Chen, from leaving. "Fenju, Fenri, don't go too far. Zhuowen is Xiao's son. Even if you hate me, there is no need to vent your anger on Zhuowen." Zhuo Xiaotian's gaze turned cold as he said coldly, "His Mrs. son." Hearing these words, Fenju and Fenri's bodies stiffened, but they did not stop the star that was flying towards the sky. "Sure enough, Miss really gave birth to an unfilial son for you. If it wasn't for you, Miss might already be the sect master of the Burning Heaven sect. But it's all because of you that Miss ended up in such a miserable state. I will not let this child go." Fenri's gaze flickered. He stomped his foot and actually did not give up. He wanted to intercept the star, but he was stopped by Fenju. "Fenju, what are you doing? Zhuo Xiaotian, this bastard, not only ruined Mrs.'s reputation, he even gave birth to this unfilial son. How can we let him go like this? Miss is currently suffering, but this Zhuo Xiaotian is only sealed here. It's too easy for him." Fenri said in a flustered and exasperated manner. Fenju shook his head and said, "No matter what, that Zhuowen also has half of Mrs.'s bloodline. There's no need to kill him. If Miss finds out, I'm afraid she'll be heartbroken." Hearing this, Fenri fell silent. He snorted coldly, "I really don't know if it's worth it for Miss to sacrifice so much for this bastard Zhuo Xiaotian." As they spoke, the two returned to the periphery of the Great Restrictive Array. The seals in their hands changed again. Immediately, the great restrictive array surged with flames that soared into the sky. This wisp of flames was extremely surging, as if it connected the heavens and the earth. Zhuo Xiaotian quietly sat cross-legged at the center of the flames. The two-headed nether dragon crouched beside him. Zhuo Xiaotian slowly raised his head and stared at the dark star that was constantly moving away. He softly said, "Xiao, I finally saw our son. He's very strong and handsome. If you can see him, you'll definitely smile happily. You'll definitely look so good when you smile. I really want to see your smile again." At this point, a line of clear tears suddenly streaked across Zhuo Xiaotian's cheeks and dripped onto the ground. The instant the flames engulfed Zhuo Xiaotian, the Cyan Emperor, who was standing outside the Great Restrictive Array, stared fixedly at the dark star that was constantly moving away. He sneered, "Zhuo Xiaotian, you're too naive. Do you really think Zhuowen can escape? He must die." As he spoke, the Cyan Emperor leaped and turned into a green light that shot towards the dark star. In an instant, he caught up to the dark star that was still flying high in the sky. This Cyan Emperor is like a ghost that won't go away. Zhuowen also noticed the Cyan Emperor who was chasing after him. His expression instantly became extremely ugly. Not only was his sea of consciousness in a mess because of the Cyan Emperor, he was also unable to use his mental strength. Moreover, because he had used too much of the Blood Devil's power earlier, his entire body was extremely weak. He had no combat strength at all. If he was intercepted by the Cyan Emperor, he would definitely die. "Speed up. I can't let the Cyan Emperor catch up to me." Zhuowen let out a low roar, and the dark energy on the surface of his body immediately surged with a blazing light. Then, the enormous star beneath him actually sped up several times, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a black dot. "Do you think you can escape by increasing your speed?" The Cyan Emperor sneered. He stepped into the void, and his speed was actually a little faster than the dark star. Whoosh! In an instant, the Cyan Emperor stepped onto the dark star. He stared at Zhuowen from above and said, "Little bastard. Do you really think Zhuo Xiaotian can bring you out of the imperial capital? It's simply a fool's dream. In the end, you won't be able to escape from the palm of my hand." As he spoke, the Cyan Emperor's right hand formed a palm. Cyan energy surged out and suddenly slammed towards Zhuowen. He wanted to completely kill Zhuowen here and now. Feeling the cyan palm of the Cyan Emperor getting closer and closer, Zhuowen's expression was extremely ugly. The Cyan Emperor was really difficult to deal with. He actually wanted to kill him. It was really hateful. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The moment the Cyan Emperor's palm wind was about to hit him, the dark energy attached to Zhuowen's body suddenly surged out. It actually turned into a huge black dragon claw and slammed towards the Cyan Emperor. Boom! The dragon claw and the palm wind collided. Black and cyan energy surged out from between the two, forming a black and cyan explosion. This explosion expanded bigger and bigger. In the end, it shattered the space between the two of them. Then, the space around the two of them directly collapsed. In the cracks of the collapsed space, space-time turbulence suddenly swept out. The Cyan Emperor groaned and actually retreated dozens of steps. He looked at the black energy with a serious gaze and said coldly, "Zhuo Xiaotian, I knew you were hiding this move. It's just a blow with your full strength. Do you think I can't break it?" As he spoke, the Cyan Emperor stomped his foot. An even more terrifying cyan energy surged out and actually overshadowed the black energy in one move. This bastard. Chapter 881. Space-time turbulence. This guy is actually planning to enter the spatial crack. He's simply courting death. Come back here. Looking at Zhuowen's actions, the Cyan Emperor's eyes narrowed. He extended his right hand, wanting to capture Zhuowen who had entered the spatial crack. Seeing the Cyan Emperor's right hand getting closer and closer, Zhuowen's gaze slightly changed. He hurriedly increased his speed and stepped into the spatial crack. Boom! The Cyan Emperor's right hand missed. Powerful cyan energy surged out, causing the spatial crack to tremble and almost collapse. Looking at the spatial crack that was slowly closing, the Cyan Emperor's expression became extremely ugly. At this critical moment, Zhuoan actually chose to enter the spatial crack. One had to know that within the spatial crack, there was an extremely terrifying spacetime turbulence. This spacetime turbulence was extremely terrifying. Even if an Emperor Realm expert entered, they would be in danger of dying. However, this Zhuoan was only at the Sovereign Realm, yet he actually dared to rush into the spatial crack. In the Cyan Emperor's eyes, this was undoubtedly an act of courting death. Entering the spatial crack, this kid will definitely die. In the end, he'll just be a dead man. With a stomp of his foot, the dark star beneath the Cyan Emperor's feet instantly shattered into pieces. After that, the Cyan Emperor left hatefully. At this moment, Fen Zhu and Fen Ri had already reached the final moment of the forbidden array. The two of them retracted their hands, and the soaring flames actually gradually descended, transforming into a gigantic volcano that was 1,000 feet tall. This gigantic volcano quietly pressed down on the abyss. From time to time, the flames that shot out flickered with a mysterious light, causing this volcano to appear exceptionally different. Withdrawing their hands, Fen Zhu and Fen Ri looked at the gigantic volcano in front of them with complicated expressions, and slowly landed on the ground. Whoosh! A Cyan figure flashed past, and the Cyan Emperor gracefully landed in front of the two of them. He cupped his hands and asked, "Elders, has the forbidden array been completely activated? Is it possible for Zhuo Xiaotian to break this restrictive spell formation?" The Cyan Emperor stared at the faintly discernible gigantic abyss within the volcano with fear. Zhuo Xiaotian's cultivation had advanced too quickly. 20 years ago, he was still not a match for the Cyan Emperor. 20 years later, the strength that Zhuo Xiaotian displayed actually made him feel breathless. Don't worry, the Great Forbidden Formation is an extremely powerful formation of our Burning Heaven sect. If a martial artist of the Emperor Realm is trapped inside, the probability of breaking out of the formation is basically impossible. Fen Zhu said indifferently. The Azure Emperor nodded. He had naturally heard of the Grand Restrictive Formation, but the pressure Zhuo Xiaotian gave him was too great, so he had no choice but to ask. Qing Di. This time, the forbidden spell formation has been resolved, and we have to return to the southern barbarian lands. If we leave for too long without a word, the sect master will be suspicious. Fen Zhu and Fen Ri cupped their hands towards Emperor Qing and were about to get up and leave, but they were stopped by Emperor Qing. Is there anything else? Fen Ri asked with some displeasure. The Lotus Emperor's face stiffened. Then, he smiled and said, "Elders, how is she Yarrow now? Is she doing well now?" At this point, a rare look of hope appeared on the Lotus Emperor's face as he spoke. Fen Zhu and Fen Ri looked at each other and shook their heads. Their faces were filled with sighs as they said, "How good do you think it will be? Miss broke her vow to elope with Zhuo Xiaotian and even gave birth to a vile child. The sect master is already being lenient by not killing Miss, however, even if she can avoid death, she can't escape punishment. Right now, Miss is still locked up in the top floor of the burning flame tower, suffering. The few of us who followed Miss back then all feel sorry for her. It's actually the top floor of the burning flame tower. Elders, why didn't you tell me about this back then? Doesn't that mean that she Yarrow has already suffered in the burning flame tower for 20 years? Hearing this, the Lotus Emperor's expression became slightly ugly, and a trace of worry appeared in his eyes. What's the use of telling you? Can you bring Miss out of the burning flame tower? Not to mention that you are not a member of the Burning Heaven sect, even if you are, with your cultivation of the second stage of the Emperor Realm, the chances of you breaking into the top floor of the burning flame tower are very slim. Fen Zhu and Fen Ri shook their heads. Then how long will the Burning Heaven sect's sect master imprison Shi Yarrow? The Lotus Emperor asked in a deep voice. The Burning Flame Tower was an extremely famous and powerful prison within the Burning Heaven sect. It was specially used to imprison some of the southern barbarians who resisted the Burning Heaven sect. It was said that it was a terrifying place built by the first sect master of the Burning Heaven sect. Within the Burning Flame Tower, there were quite a few prisoners with cultivation similar to the Lotus Emperor. None of them were able to escape from the Burning Flame Tower, and the top floor of the Burning Flame Tower was the most terrifying floor of the Burning Flame Tower. With the Lotus Emperor's cultivation, he probably wouldn't be able to hold on for long once he entered that place, let alone save Feng Xiao. Forever and ever. After Fen Ju and Fen Ri said this, they flicked their sleeves and turned into two streaks of light that flew towards the distant horizon. Very quickly, they disappeared from the Lotus Emperor's line of sight. Forever and ever. The Lotus Emperor's pupils shrank as his body staggered. However, the corner of his mouth revealed a bitter smile. He never thought that the Burning Heaven sect master would be so ruthless as to actually plan to imprison Shi Yarrow in the Burning Flame Tower for eternity. Zhuo Xiaotian, it's all because of you that Shi Yarrow will be imprisoned in the Burning Flame Tower for eternity. All of this is caused by you. Are you still a man? You actually want a woman to bear the consequences of your mistakes. The Lotus Emperor roared at the 3,000-meter tall volcano. His voice was filled with endless resentment and hatred. He knew that Zhuo Xiaotian, who was inside the Great Forbidden Array, would definitely be able to hear his voice. Within the endless sea of fire, a figure silently sat cross-legged. His originally tightly shut eyes slowly opened, and there was a deep sorrow in his eyes. Forever and ever. No, I will definitely save Xiao. It's just that my current strength is not enough. Xiao, I definitely won't make you wait for too long. Very soon, I will break through my shackles and head to the Burning Heaven sect to save you. As he muttered, the sorrow in Zhuo Xiaotian's eyes was replaced by determination. Very quickly, his figure was drowned by the endless sea of fire. This damned Lotus Emperor, he really wants to cut the weeds and eliminate the root. At this moment, Zhuoan was in a very bad situation. After entering the spatial crack, he was swept into the space-time turbulence. The terrifying destructive power of the space-time turbulence almost tormented Zhuoan to death. If it weren't for the dark energy that Zhuo Xiaotian had transferred to him on the surface of his body, he was afraid that in his current state, he would have been torn to pieces the moment he came into contact with the space-time turbulence. When he thought of how the Lotus Emperor had intercepted him at the last moment, Zhuoan gnashed his teeth in hatred. If it weren't for the Lotus Emperor, he would have probably escaped from the imperial capital long ago. His eyes flashing, Zhuoan flicked his finger. A black light flashed and Xiao He appeared in front of him. This is space-time turbulence. After being released, Xiao He was originally a little confused. However, when she saw her surroundings clearly, all the hairs on her body stood on end and she cried out in alarm. Boy, what's wrong with you? Also, weren't you bedeviled? Why don't you show any signs of bedeviling now? Xiao He looked at Zhuoan and suddenly asked in confusion. Seeing Xiao He floating leisurely in the space-time turbulence and looking completely fine, Zhuoan couldn't help but roll his eyes. The space-time turbulence was the wind of nothingness. It was said that it was extremely destructive only to materialized objects. However, to a spiritual body like Xiao He, it wasn't very harmful. Spiritual bodies could even move freely in the space-time turbulence. However, as a spiritual body staying in the space-time turbulence for a long time would accelerate the consumption of the spiritual body's energy. When that time came, the spiritual body would quickly dissipate in the space-time turbulence and become a part of it. This was also the reason why Zhuoan released Xiao He without worry. After all, the latter was a spiritual body and didn't need to fear the space-time turbulence at all. Seeing that Xiao He was so confused, Zhuoan briefly explained what had happened earlier. After listening, Xiao He also understood the cause and effect. She stroked her chin with her little paw and said, I really didn't expect that the person imprisoned on the 18th floor of the dungeon would actually be your father, Zhuo Xiaotian. Moreover, your father's strength is even much stronger than that of Emperor Qing. However, I'm afraid that there's a certain hidden reason why your father didn't leave the dungeon. Zhuoan nodded and immediately said to Xiao He, we'll talk about this later. You should think of a way to help me pass through the space-time turbulence first. I'm afraid that the dark energy in my body will dissipate with the passage of time. When that time comes, I will be completely exposed in the space-time turbulence and will only end up being smashed to pieces. Xiao He spread her hands and chuckled. The space-time turbulence is unpredictable and has no direction to speak of. It also has no pattern. This dragon master doesn't know how to deal with it either. Hearing this, Zhuoan rolled his eyes violently. It turned out that releasing Xiao He was a waste of effort. It seems that I can only look for it myself and see if I can find a spatial crack. Zhuoan sighed and struggled to get up. Don't move. Every time you move in the space-time turbulence, the dark energy in your body will be consumed faster. Once this energy is exhausted, you'll be finished. Xiao He suddenly stopped Zhuoan and said. Hearing this, Zhuoan immediately stopped moving and said helplessly, "Do you want me to just go with the flow like this? This is the only way now. Follow the space-time turbulence and if you're lucky, you might be able to find another spatial crack. At that time, you'll be able to escape with your life. Now, the longer you can hold on, the greater your chances of survival," Xiao He said seriously. Zhuoan's eyes lit up. Xiao He was right. After all, the space-time turbulence had no pattern to speak of. The chances of him taking the initiative to search for a spatial crack or going with the flow were about the same. Choosing to go with the flow could save energy, so this was undoubtedly the best method. Chapter 882. In an unfamiliar place-time passed second by second. Zhuowen was like a corpse as he lay motionless in the chaotic flow of time and space. He had already been like this for nearly 3 days. However, to Zhuowen's disappointment, he did not discover any spatial cracks during these 3 days. With the passage of 3 days, the dark energy around Zhuowen grew dimmer and dimmer, as if it would vanish at any moment. This caused Zhuowen to be on tenterhooks for a long time. It's already been 3 days, but I still haven't discovered any spatial cracks. Am I really going to die in this turbulence of space-time? Zhuowen muttered to himself, unwilling to give up. Xiao He remained silent, which was rare for her. Her beady eyes stared at the surroundings of the turbulence of space-time. Zhuowen could not be bothered to say anything when he saw Xiao He's reaction. He continued to lie in the turbulence of space-time like a corpse. Kid, stop playing dead. There's a spatial crack up ahead. Hurry up and get ready." Suddenly, Xiao He's voice rang out in surprise. Zhuowen hurriedly stood up and looked in the direction Xiao He had pointed. Sure enough, he discovered a rather dazzling light there. The turbulence of space-time was grey. It was impossible for any light to appear there. This light could only have come from the outside world. Crack! A clear sound suddenly sounded. Zhuowen was startled. He lowered his head and immediately discovered that the dark black energy covering the surface of his body had actually gradually dimmed. Moreover, densely packed cracks had appeared on the surface of his body. Oh no, this emperor energy is about to dissipate. Xiao He, how far away is the light? Zhuowen's heart was about to leap out of his chest when he saw the cracks that were constantly spreading. He had already reached a critical juncture. The spatial crack was just inches away. Was he going to fail at the last hurdle? There's still about 1,000 meters left. With the current speed of the turbulence of spacetime, we should be able to reach the spatial crack in about 10 breaths. Kid, don't move around. Otherwise, you'll waste the excess energy. Xiao He also noticed Zhuowen's situation and said solemnly. Zhuowen nodded when he heard that. He lay there motionless like a corpse again. Although Zhuowen tried very hard not to move, cracks continued to spread across the surface of the energy around him. There were still 5 breaths left. The cracks had already spread to nearly half of the energy. 5 breaths. 4 breaths. 3 breaths. 2 breaths. 1 breaths. Finally, the spatial crack was just inches away. The light emitted a warm warmth. It was the sunlight of the outside world. Crack. At this moment, the energy on the surface of Zhuowen's body finally collapsed completely, turning into an ethereal black mist. Let's go. Zhuowen cried out furiously the moment the energy disappeared. His foot stepped forward and he stepped into the spatial crack that was overflowing with light. Kai. Unfortunately, just as Zhuowen was about to step into the spatial crack, Zhuowen, who had lost the protection of the dark energy, was completely exposed to the air. The endless space-time turbulence was like a violent storm and tsunami. It suddenly crushed toward Zhuowen, wanting to completely destroy Zhuowen. Damn it! Divine Sun Cauldron, come out. Looking at the turbulence of spacetime behind him, Zhuowen flicked his finger and quickly took out the dazzling divine sun cauldron from his spirit ring. Immediately, the endless sun fire protected Zhuowen, and the divine sun cauldron stood behind Zhuowen, trying to block the spacetime turbulence. Bang! What shocked Zhuowen was that the power of the spacetime turbulence was beyond his expectations. As soon as the divine sun cauldron came into contact with the spacetime turbulence, the originally dazzling divine sun cauldron actually became dim. Whoosh! In just an instant, the divine sun cauldron turned into a stream of light and returned to Zhuowen's spirit ring. The wisp of sun fire that wrapped around Zhuowen was scattered by the spacetime turbulence. Poochie! The sun fire was dispelled, and the aftermath of the spacetime turbulence immediately slammed into Zhuowen's chest, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Zhuowen, who was originally heavily injured, almost fainted under this blow. Let's go. Xiao Hei appeared beside Zhuowen at this moment. With a wave of her little claws, the ink-black energy turned into a palm and pulled Zhuowen's shoulder. Taking advantage of the momentum, Zhuowen immediately escaped from the spatial crack. Bang! 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 After exiting the spatial crack, Zhuowen discovered that he was actually on a cliff. Below the cliff was a lush forest. Unfortunately for Zhuowen, he was actually in the middle of the cliff, and the cliff was very steep. Xiao Hei, what should I do? Right now, I can't mobilize any power at all. If I fall from here, I'll be done for. Zhuowen hurriedly called out to Xiao Hei. Kid, this dragon lord isn't much better off than you. Just now, when I pulled you out of the spatial crack, I used up almost all of my origin energy. Now, I don't have any strength to help you. You can only pray for yourself. At this moment, Xiao Hei's entire body was dim and lightless. She quietly lay on Zhuowen's shoulder. After giving Zhuowen a helpless look, she turned into a black light and disappeared into the spirit ring. Looking at Xiao Hei's appearance, Zhuowen knew that it was impossible to rely on Xiao Hei. Thus, he curled up into a ball and tried his best to protect the vital parts of his body. He dejectedly rolled down the cliff along the rock wall. Bang! When he finally reached the bottom, Zhuowen violently collided with a thick tree trunk. The powerful impact even caused the thick tree trunk to shake violently. When this powerful impact spread to Zhuowen's body, it immediately caused him to feel as if all of his internal organs had shifted. He spat out a mouthful of blood and his vision turned black. He actually directly fainted. In the lush forest, a winding path divided the forest into two areas. Suddenly, the sound of horse hooves could be heard from the winding path, causing a flock of birds to fly into the air. The sound of horse hooves came closer and closer. Soon, more than 10 figures appeared. These figures were all riding tall horses and wearing the same black and grey uniform. They seemed to be the guards of some faction. At the front of these figures was a middle-aged man with a face that had seen the vicissitudes of life. He carried a large blade on his back, and his spine was straight. He was in high spirits. He was clearly the leader of these people. In addition, behind the dozen or so people, an extremely luxurious carriage was following them at a moderate pace. This carriage had 2 large horses at the front. Moreover, these 2 large horses were extremely extraordinary. There were flames on their 4 hooves, and with every step they took, a long fire snake would be dragged out on the ground. They were extremely mighty. If a cultivator passed by here, they would definitely be able to recognize the 2 large horses in front of the carriage. They were powerful origin beasts called scarlet demon horses. Usually, scarlet flame demon horses had the strength of a first-wheel ultimate emperor realm cultivator. Some mutated scarlet flame demon horses could reach the 3rd wheel ultimate emperor realm. However, these mutated scarlet flame demon horses were very rare. Those who could possess scarlet demon horses were basically wealthy clans or factions. It was very difficult for an ordinary person to possess a scarlet demon horse. However, this group possessed 2 scarlet demon horses all of a sudden. It was obvious that this group's origins were extremely extraordinary. Halt! Suddenly, the middle-aged man at the front pulled on the reins and forced his horse to stop. Seeing the middle-aged man stop, the rest of the people behind him stopped as well. They looked at the middle-aged man with puzzled eyes. Commander Wan, The young lady is asking why you stopped. Could it be that you've encountered bandits? A clear and melodious voice came from within the carriage. A young woman with a cold expression came out of the carriage and asked the middle-aged man at the front. Lady Lang Ying, look. As he spoke, Commander Wan pointed at the road ahead. There was a ragged figure with disheveled hair lying quietly in the middle of the road. Why would someone lie on the side of the road in this desolate area? The cold woman called Lang Ying also noticed the figure. Her eyes flashed as she spoke in a low voice. Lady Lang Ying, how should we deal with this person? Commander Wan asked politely. He's just an unimportant person. Moreover, from the looks of it, he's probably been hunted down by someone. We shouldn't meddle in other people's business. Move this person away and we'll continue on our way, Lang Ying said without even thinking. Yes. Commander Wan nodded. He dismounted from his horse and walked to the side of the figure. He picked him up and unceremoniously threw him to the side of the road in the forest. Commander Wan clapped his hands. Just as he was about to return, another voice rang out. This voice was much gentler than Lang Ying's. It gave people a comfortable feeling as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. Commander Wan, this person looks like a pitiful person. After all, it's fate that brought us together. Bring him along. As she spoke, another beautiful figure walked out from the carriage. This woman was much younger than Lang Ying. She was slim and elegant. Her entire body emitted a gentle aura. Although this woman did not have a peerless appearance, her clean eyes gave her a gentle and soft feeling. However, the only flaw was that this woman's face was extremely pale. It was so pale that it did not seem like a human face. Lingyu, why did you come out? Your body is not well. Don't come out so casually. As for this stranger, it's best that we don't meddle in his business. After all, this person's background is unknown. Who knows if he's good or bad? Lang Ying came to the side of the delicate woman. She took the opportunity to hold her right hand and supported her as she spoke in a slightly displeased tone. Sister Lang Ying, this person is quite young and doesn't look like a bad person. Now that we've coincidentally met him, it can be considered a kind of fate. Let's form a good relationship with this person. The delicate woman named Lingyu smiled at Lang Ying. Although her voice was gentle, it revealed a trace of unquestionable meaning. Seeing that Lingyu was so insistent, Lang Ying did not say anything. She turned to Commander Wan and said, since Lady Lang Ying has said so, Commander Wan, I'll have to trouble you again. Chapter 883. Throwing away the failure ring, Commander Wan carried the heavily injured and ragged figure in his arms. He walked in front of the delicate lady and Lang Ying and inquired, Young Miss Lang Ying, where should we place this person? This person seems to be heavily injured. He will definitely not be able to endure the fatigue of riding a horse. Place him in my carriage, the delicate lady softly said. When these words were spoken, Lang Ying and Commander Wan's expressions changed slightly. Lang Ying hurriedly stopped her. Lingyu, you have already done us a great favor by saving this person. How can you allow him to enter your carriage? If news of this spreads, your reputation will be tarnished. Furthermore, this person's origin is unknown. If he wakes up and does something to you, wouldn't that be terrible? Miss Lang Ying is right. This person's background is unknown and we don't know if he is a good or bad person. If he were to attack you after he wakes up, it would be really bad. Commander Wan also agreed. The delicate lady shook her head and said, Don't worry. Sister Lang Ying is so powerful. Why would she be afraid of me being in danger? Furthermore, this person seems to be heavily injured. After he wakes up, he will definitely not be able to use any strength. He is not a threat to me. But, Lang Ying wanted to say something but was stopped by the delicate lady. She said, I have already decided on this matter. You don't need to persuade me. Just place this person in the carriage. Commander Wan and Lang Ying could not disobey the delicate lady when they saw her determination. They nodded and Commander Wan carried the person and placed him in the carriage. The delicate lady and Lang Ying followed him into the carriage. After everything was arranged, Commander Wan once again mounted the horse. He kicked the horse's stomach and continued to rush forward on the winding path. In the carriage, the delicate lady and Leng Ying quietly stared at the figure lying in front of them. Only then did they notice that this person was not very old. He was about 20 years old. Although his clothes were ragged and his hair was disheveled, his angular face was quite pleasant to look at. "Sister Leng Ying, why do you think this person fell in this desolate wilderness?" The delicate lady's beautiful eyes quietly stared at the youth in front of her and softly asked. Although the unconscious young man in front of him looked quite young, there was always a trace of gloominess lingering between his eyebrows, as if he had experienced extremely deep suffering. Such an expression rarely appeared on a young man in his 20s. The weak woman knew that the unconscious young man in front of her had definitely experienced hardships that she did not know about. Therefore, she was filled with curiosity towards this young man. Leng Ying's beautiful eyes fell on the young man, especially his sloppy appearance. Her eyes were filled with disgust, and she coldly replied, "I'm afraid he was also chased by someone to end up like this. However, I don't think this person is a good person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been chased to such a sorry state." The delicate-looking woman shook her head and did not reply. She could feel Leng Ying's disgust towards the young man in front of her. Therefore, she did not say anything and only quietly stared at the sloppy young man. Leng Ying glanced around and saw the black spirit ring on Zhuowen's right hand. A trace of surprise flashed across her beautiful eyes. She naturally knew about the spirit ring. It was a type of storage ring with an extremely large space. Generally, only heavenly venerables could refine a spirit ring. Therefore, those who could wear a spirit ring were either fourth venerables or young geniuses who had heavenly venerables as their elders. Although their one clan was quite powerful, only their patriarch and her father possessed a spirit ring. As for her, she only had a high-grade Chenkuan bag. Leng Ying had coveted that spirit ring for a long time. However, the young man in front of her had an extremely weak aura. He was probably only at the ultimate emperor realm. Leng Ying could not help but narrow her beautiful eyes and imagine that he actually had such a precious spirit ring. "I'm afraid this young man is being chased because of this spirit ring. He's so weak and in such a sorry state. He's definitely not a disciple of a large clan." Leng Ying's beautiful eyes flickered. With a single glance, she was certain that the young man in front of her did not own this spirit ring. It was very likely that he had stolen it. In that case, it made sense that he was being chased. Thinking of this, a trace of greed flashed across Leng Ying's beautiful eyes. She stretched out her right hand, intending to take the spirit ring from the young man's hand. "Sister Leng Ying, what are you doing?" The delicate woman saw Leng Ying's actions and could not help but frown. Leng Ying's jade-like hand stiffened. She quickly took the spirit ring from the young man's hand and put it on her own hand. She then turned to look at the delicate woman and said, "Lingyu, this is a spirit ring. We saved this young man, so we can't help him for nothing. Consider this as a reward for saving him." Spirit ring? When the delicate girl heard this, her pretty face froze. Soon after, she revealed a shocked expression. She had naturally heard of the spirit ring. Although her family was not big, it was not small either. Her father was the current head of the family, and he had a spirit ring in his hand. However, spirit rings were precious items that only experts and monstrous geniuses could possess. This seemingly ordinary young man in front of her actually had such a spirit ring. "Sister Leng Ying, since this person has a spirit ring, it means that his identity is not simple. If you take his spirit ring like this, it will be difficult to deal with him later." The delicate woman frowned slightly. However, Leng Ying shook her head and glanced indifferently at the unconscious young man. She said, "Lingyu, don't worry. Since this person is in such a sorry state, and his aura is only at the ultimate emperor realm, he is definitely not a disciple of a large clan. I suspect that he stole the spirit ring. That's why he's in such a sorry state." When she heard this, the delicate woman's frown deepened. She was well aware of Leng Ying's desire for a spirit ring. As the number one genius of her clan's younger generation, Leng Ying had wanted a spirit ring for a long time. However, the value of a spirit ring was too high. In her clan, Only the patriarch and Leng Ying's father possessed one. If she were to buy it from a heavenly venerate, the price would be too high. It was not worth it. Therefore, Leng Ying had never been able to obtain the spirit ring she wanted. Now that a spirit ring had suddenly appeared in front of her, how could she not be moved? Just as the delicate woman was about to say something, Leng Ying interrupted her and said, "Ling Yu, don't worry, I know what I'm doing." Seeing Leng Ying's firm attitude, the delicate woman could only sigh inwardly. Leng Ying was not her subordinate, so she had no right to order Leng Ying around. Therefore, the delicate woman could only watch as Leng Ying put the spirit ring on her finger. After slowly waking up, Zhuowen felt dizzy. When he opened his eyes, he discovered that he was in an extremely elegant private room. Furthermore, he could clearly feel that the private room he was in was constantly rolling forward. It was very obvious that this private room was within the carriage. Zhuowen remembered that he had walked out of the spatial turbulence with great difficulty. Unfortunately, he had landed in the middle of a cliff. After that, he had rolled down the cliff and slammed into a tree trunk. After that, he had fainted. Now that he had woken up, the unfamiliar environment in front of him caused Zhuowen to be filled with confusion. He struggled to prop himself up. Only then did Zhuowen notice that there were actually two people in the carriage. Moreover, both of them were women. One of the women had a warm smile on her beautiful face, but her face was sickly pale. Her entire body exuded a delicate beauty. The other woman's face was cold, and her beautiful eyes were filled with a trace of arrogance. She was extremely cold. "You're awake." The delicate woman smiled and said. As for Leng Ying, she coldly glanced at Zhuowen and did not say a word. It was as if Zhuowen owed her money. Zhuowen did not mind Leng Ying's cold attitude. He looked at the delicate woman and said with a smile, "Did something happen when I was unconscious? Did you save me?" "Yes. Originally, we were passing by this forest by accident. We just happened to see you lying in front of the road, so we saved you," the delicate woman admitted generously. Hearing this, Zhuowen cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for saving my life. May I know your name?" "He. My name is Ruan Lingyu. You can call me Lingyu. This is Sister Leng Ying. She is the #1 expert in the younger generation of the Ruan clan." The delicate woman pointed at the cold woman beside her and introduced her. "My name is Zhuowen. I am a cultivator who likes to travel." Nodding his head, Zhuowen casually greeted Leng Ying. Soon after, he began to converse with Ruan Lingyu. This Leng Ying did not have a pleasant expression on her face the moment he woke up. Zhuowen could ignore her, but he could not ask for a snub. Furthermore, Zhuowen also discovered that his cultivation had dropped to the level of an ultimate Emperor realm cultivator. He instantly felt extremely helpless. He knew that the reason for this was mainly because he had used up too much energy when he had turned into a demon. This caused his cultivation to drop again and again. If Shuo Xiaotian had not extracted the blood demon's energy from his body in time, Zhuowen's fate would have been unimaginable. At that time, his cultivation might have been crippled and he might not even be able to keep his life. Although his cultivation had dropped drastically, Zhuowen was still at the initial stage of the Supreme Being realm. If he had enough energy, he could definitely cultivate back to the initial stage of the Supreme Being realm in a short period of time. There are still the nascent souls of the 5 heavenly sovereigns in the spirit ring. If I absorb the energy of the nascent souls of these heavenly sovereigns, my cultivation will quickly recover. Zhuowen muttered in his heart. He was not discouraged by the drop in his cultivation. He gently tapped his right hand and suddenly discovered something. He hurriedly looked at his right ring finger. He saw that there was no sign of a spirit ring on his ring finger. In an instant, Zhuowen's face darkened. He raised his head slightly and quickly noticed that there was a spirit ring on Leng Ying's right finger. This spirit ring was exactly the same as his. Without a doubt, Leng Ying had stolen his spirit ring. Chapter 884. Yang Xian Empire. Leng Ying's eyes darkened when she saw Zhuowen staring at her. Her expression was a little ugly. This young man in front of her was really impudent. He was actually staring at her without restraint. Zhuowen didn't retract his gaze because of Leng Ying's words. Instead, he pointed at Leng Ying's finger with his right hand and asked, "May I ask Miss Leng Ying, where did you get the spirit ring on your finger?" Leng Ying's beautiful eyes narrowed, but soon returned to normal. She glanced at Zhuowen indifferently and said arrogantly, "Of course it's mine." Zhuowen's eyes darkened when he heard this. He said coldly, "Then why is your spirit ring exactly the same as mine? My spirit ring is missing, but the spirit ring on your finger is exactly the same as mine. How do you explain this?" Leng Ying's beautiful eyes narrowed, and her expression was a little ugly. She didn't expect Zhuowen to question her as soon as he woke up. Her expression was a little ugly, and she was even a little flustered. "Sister Leng Ying, the spirit ring originally belonged to Zhuowen. You should return it to him." Ruan Lingyu couldn't stand it anymore and said to the ugly Leng Ying. Zhuowen raised his eyebrows. His spirit ring was indeed taken by Leng Ying. At the same time, his impression of Ruan Lingyu improved greatly. At this time, she didn't hide the truth from Zhuowen. Therefore, Zhuowen thought more highly of Ruan Lingyu. Moreover, what surprised Zhuowen was that Ruan Lingyu didn't have any cultivation. Moreover, with her sickly appearance, Ruan Lingyu was even weaker than an ordinary person. What exactly happened to her? Leng Ying's expression was extremely ugly when Ruan Lingyu exposed her. She glared at Ruan Lingyu fiercely, then looked at Zhuowen and said indifferently, "You're just a piece of trash at the ultimate emperor realm. What right do you have to possess a spirit ring? This spirit ring will only be snatched away by others if it's on you. You don't have the ability to protect the spirit ring at all. I'm already an ultimate emperor realm third wheel. Keeping it on me is the best choice." Hearing this, Zhuowen's face turned cold as he coldly said, "You stole my things, and you still have reason? No matter how dignified your words are, you still stole my spirit ring, didn't you?" Leng Ying snorted coldly and said, "So what if I am? We saved your life and even allowed you to enter the carriage. Isn't it natural for us to take your spirit ring as a reward? If it weren't for us, you would have already died on the road. How could you be sitting so comfortably in the carriage right now? Now, not only are you not grateful, you're questioning me. Don't you feel ashamed? If you mention this matter again, don't blame me for being merciless and kicking you out of the carriage." Zhuowen's face darkened. This Leng Ying was truly shameless. The person who had saved him on the road wasn't Leng Ying, but Ruan Lingyu, who was beside her. Now, this Leng Ying was taking all the credit for saving his life and didn't even ask Ruan Lingyu about it. This woman was truly shameless. "The person who saved me wasn't you, Miss Leng Ying, but Miss Lingyu. According to what you've said, you saved my life, so there's nothing wrong with giving away the spirit ring. However, what does this have to do with you, Miss Leng Ying? Everything was done by Miss Lingyu. What's the meaning of you taking the spirit ring for yourself? I can give away the spirit ring, but it's not for you. It's for Miss Lingyu," Zhuowen said coldly. Leng Ying glanced indifferently at Zhuowen, then said, "Lingyu is my good sister. We're as close as brothers. Moreover, Lingyu has no cultivation. After all, a man's wealth is his own ruin. Since Lingyu has no cultivation, leaving the spirit ring with her will only harm her. Thus, I'll keep it for the time being." Leng Ying's words were full of righteousness, as if she was thinking for Ruan Lingyu, but in reality, she was planning to keep the spirit ring for herself. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Ruan Lingyu had no cultivation, so it was useless for her to have the spirit ring. Leng Ying was helping her keep the spirit ring for herself. "Now, I order you to erase the imprint on the spirit ring. I'm going to make this spirit ring recognize me as its owner," Leng Ying suddenly ordered Zhuowen. Zhuowen stared coldly at Leng Ying. She had gone too far. She had taken Zhuowen's spirit ring without his consent. Now, she was even planning to force Zhuowen to remove the imprint on his spirit ring so that Leng Ying could recognize him as her master. Was she really treating him like a servant? "What about the things in the spirit ring?" Zhuowen asked coldly, narrowing his eyes. Leng Ying sneered and said, "You want to take back the things in the spirit ring? You think too highly of yourself. The things in the spirit ring can be considered as our reward for saving you. Stop talking nonsense and quickly remove the imprint on the spirit ring. However, Zhuowen smiled and said coldly, sorry. Although I, Zhuowen, am grateful to Miss Lingyu for saving my life, what does that have to do with you? What right do you have to make me remove the imprint on the spirit ring? What right do you have? Oh, what a stubborn fellow. Now, I'll give you a chance. Remove the imprint on the spirit ring or get lost. Leng Ying said coldly, her voice filled with coldness. Enough. Sister Leng Ying, don't go overboard. After all, Zhuowen is a guest. How can you force him like this? Suddenly, Ruan Lingyu, who had been silent, exploded. A rare trace of anger appeared on her gentle face. Even she, as the person involved, could not stand Leng Ying's actions. Therefore, Ruan Lingyu finally exploded. Ruan Lingyu's sudden outburst stunned both Leng Ying and Zhuowen. Then, Leng Ying came back to her senses and pointed at Zhuowen, saying, Lingyu, don't be fooled by this person. We did save his life, but not only is he not grateful, he's not even willing to cooperate. He's not even willing to hand over his spirit ring. It's clear that he's not grateful at all. All right. I was the one who saved young Master Zhuo. Sister Leng Ying, aren't you going overboard by forcing young Master Zhuo like this? I advise you to return the spirit ring to young Master Zhuo, Ruan Lingyu said seriously. However, Leng Ying shook her head and said firmly, my actions are only to protect this spirit ring. This Zhuowen is too weak. If it is on him, it will be taken away by others sooner or later. It is better for it to be on me. All right, since Lingyu has spoken, I won't force this piece of trash anymore. I will go to the other room to rest. As she spoke, Leng Ying glared fiercely at Zhuowen. Then, she left the room and went to the room next door. The room that Ruan Lingyu was in was very large. There were 3 rooms in it. 2 of them were Leng Ying and Ruan Lingyu's bedroom. The last one was equivalent to the living room, which was the room that Zhuowen and Ruan Lingyu were in. Seeing Leng Ying leave without a word, Ruan Lingyu said apologetically to Zhuowen, young Master Zhuo, I am really sorry for causing you so much trouble. Sister Leng Ying is not a bad person. She just wanted a spirit ring too much and impulsively took young Master's spirit ring. When we return to the Ruan family in Yang City, I will ask my father to take back Sister Leng Ying's spirit ring and return it to young Master. Hearing Ruan Lingyu's sincere apology, the anger in Zhuowen's heart dissipated. At the same time, he sighed inwardly that Ruan Lingyu was too naive. If they really returned to their family, it would be even more impossible to get the spirit ring back. Now that he was heavily injured and his cultivation had dropped to the level of an ultimate Emperor Realm cultivator, his strength was much weaker than Leng Ying's. Therefore, Zhuowen did not rashly try to snatch the spirit ring. After all, other than Leng Ying, there were many other guards with strong auras outside. If he did not succeed, he would definitely be attacked from both sides. At that time, with his current condition, he would really be in a desperate situation. Fortunately, the spirit ring had recognized him as its owner. Even if Leng Ying obtained the spirit ring, she would not be able to open it. After all, the spirit ring contained all of Zhuowen's important things. Whether it was the nascent souls of the 5 heavenly sovereigns, the divine sun cauldron, or other heavenly and earthly soul treasures of various sizes, they were all a huge fortune. Most importantly, Xiao Hei was also in the spirit ring. Looks like I need to fully recover from my injuries and recover my strength before reaching that so-called Yang City. At that time, I will snatch the spirit ring from Leng Ying. As he secretly planned in his heart, Zhuowen sat in front of Ruan Lingyu and asked, Miss Lingyu, what kind of place is Yang City? Why have I never heard of it? Right now, Zhuowen's first priority was to find out where exactly he was. After all, the space-time turbulence had the ability to travel through space. Perhaps he had only drifted for a few days, but once he came out, he might have been millions of miles away. You don't know about Yang City? Ruan Lingyu's beautiful eyes widened as she asked in disbelief. Scratching his head, Zhuowen said somewhat embarrassedly, I originally came from a hidden place and am not very familiar with the outside world. Therefore, I would like to ask Miss Lingyu to tell me a little about it. Ruan Lingyu nodded and did not doubt Zhuowen's words. There were many hidden cultivators like Zhuowen in the Heavenly Armor continent. These cultivators cultivated in seclusion in order to pursue a higher realm. Some of these hidden cultivators even formed a powerful force. Obviously, Ruan Lingyu thought that Zhuowen was a junior of these hidden cultivators who had just come out to train. Therefore, he did not know anything about the outside world. Yang City is the central city of the Yangxian Empire. It is the most prosperous city in the entire empire. There are countless experts and forces there. It is extremely lively. Our Ruan family is one of the small family forces in Yang City. Zhuowen's pupils shrank. He did not expect that he would actually come to the territory of the Yangxian Empire. He was naturally not unfamiliar with the Yangxian Empire. Its territory was about the same size as the Qingxian Empire. Moreover, the two empires were close to each other. Therefore, the armies of the two empires would occasionally have some small conflicts at the border. Although the Yangxian Empire was right beside the Qingxian Empire, the actual distance was extremely far. If a cultivator relied on flying, it would probably take several years to reach the territory of the Yangxian Empire. Chapter 885. Strange cold air. Yang City's status in the Yangxian Empire was equivalent to the royal capital status in the Qingxian Empire. It was the most important hub in the entire royal capital. There were countless experts and practitioners in the city, and it was basically impossible to see any ordinary people. In Yang City, large and small factions were scattered all over, and it was extremely prosperous. Ruan Lingyu's Ruan clan was considered a mediocre clan in Yang City. However, it was still considered a faction and was much better than some lone practitioners. From Ruan Lingyu's words, Zhuowen discovered that the factions in Yang City were very different from the Qingxian Empire's royal capital. There were 7 major factions in the Qingxian Empire's royal capital. Furthermore, among the 7 major factions, 5 of them belonged to clans while the other 2 were the Azure Dragon Branch Hall and the royal family. However, in the Yangxian Empire, the clan's influence was much smaller. The sect's influence was much stronger than the clan's influence, and the most representative of them were the 5 major factions in Yang City. Among the 5 great powers, the Yangxian Empire's royal family was naturally ranked first. As for the other 4 great powers, they were actually all sects. They were respectively the Clear Void Valley, the Heaven Peak Devil Palace, the Myriad Star Palace and the 5 Elements sect. Among the 5 major factions, the royal family was ranked first because of the existence of the Yang Emperor. The other 4 sects' influence was on par with each other. Below the 5 major factions, there were countless clans and factions in Yang City. These clans and factions varied in size, and the competition between them was extremely intense. Among them, Ruan Lingyu's Ruan clan was considered the lowest tier among these clans and factions. According to Ruan Lingyu, among the 5 major factions in Yang City, other than the royal family, the other 4 sects' influence was basically open to the public to recruit disciples. Every year, they would recruit some talented geniuses from the various clans and factions in Yang City. This kind of recruitment of geniuses did not receive any resistance from the various clans in Yang City. Instead, it was very popular because the resources within the 4 sects were many times more abundant than the clans. If the geniuses within the clans were recruited by the 4 sects, they would receive more resources and nurturing than the clans. The speed of their cultivation would also be much faster than in the clans. In Yang City, many clans took pride in the number of their disciples that joined their sects. Even though they gave their clans geniuses to their sects, the roots of those geniuses were still in their clans. Once those geniuses matured, they would naturally take care of their own clans, allowing their clans to face even greater competition in Yang City. Zhuowen's eyes flickered as he listened to Ruan Lingyu's narration. His expression changed slightly. The Yangxian Empire was indeed very different from the Qingxian Empire. Just the sects alone were rare in the Qingxian Empire. After all, the Qingxian Empire was still dominated by clans. Zhuowen's heart was filled with curiosity towards this new distribution of forces. Miss Lingyu, since the entrance exam for the Excellent Deity Academy is about to begin, I wonder if Yang City will send geniuses to the Excellent Deity Academy to participate in the entrance exam? Zhuoan asked again. Right now, he was most concerned about the Jioshan College's entrance examination. Although he had obtained a slot from the Qing Xian Empire, he had already fallen out with the Qing Emperor. He was afraid that the slot from the Qing Xian Empire would not land on his head. Furthermore, the location of the excellent deity academy was extremely mysterious. If Zhuoan were to search for it himself, it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. Therefore, he could only think of a way from Yang City. After all, the Yang Xian Empire's influence was not any weaker than the Qing Xian Empire. There would probably be some excellent deity academy's entrance exam, and the Yang Emperor would definitely know the exact location of the excellent deity academy. Therefore, if Zhuoan wanted to enter the excellent deity academy, he could only rely on the Yang Xian Empire's route. Ruan Lingyu looked at Zhuoan in astonishment. She was a little puzzled as to why Zhuoan had asked this. However, she did not suspect too much and softly replied, Yang City has the Yang Emperor guarding it. Naturally, there will be a quota for the excellent deity academy's entrance exam. However, there are only 5 quotas and only the most talented youths in Yang City will be able to obtain them. These 5 people had already been decided 3 months ago. Young Master Zhuo, why are you suddenly asking about this? Zhuoan awkwardly scratched his head and said, I'm just curious. After all, the excellent deity academy is extremely famous in the eastern lands. Who wouldn't want to enter such a superpower to cultivate? Hearing this, Ruan Lingyu's beautiful eyes flashed with a trace of yearning. She softly muttered, that's right. It is said that the excellent deity academy is the most relaxed among all the superpowers in the eastern lands. It is said that they have never restricted the freedom of their students. If it wasn't for the fact that I was born unable to cultivate, I would have also tried my hand at the gathering of geniuses 3 months ago. The geniuses who are able to obtain a quota are the most dazzling stars in the entire Yang City. They are existences that receive the attention of tens of thousands of people. Zhuoan nodded his head. What Ruan Lingyu said was correct. Just like the Qing Xian Empire's imperial capital's Qing Huang leaderboard, the top 5 also had the qualifications to enter the excellent deity academy. The geniuses who obtained the 5 quotas were indeed existences that received the support and envy of countless people. Miss Lingyu, may I ask, I see that your face is unnaturally pale and your body is weak. There are no fluctuations of yuan power at all. Could it be that you were born like this? Zhuoan suddenly asked. Ruan Lingyu was startled. A trace of sadness appeared on her charming face and she fell into a rare silence. Seeing this, Zhuoan dryly laughed and said, it seems that this is Miss Lingyu's private matter and it is not convenient for you to say it. It is I, Zhuoan, who has been presumptuous. Ruan Lingyu shook her head and said, actually, it is not considered a private matter. There is no harm in telling young Master Zhuo. This matter started from when I was young. Thus, Ruan Lingyu slowly began to recount the events of the past. As it turned out, before Ruan Lingyu was 10 years old, her martial talent was extremely powerful. At such a young age, her cultivation was already stronger than some of the older generation. At that time, Ruan Lingyu was almost designated as the next patriarch of the Ruan clan. It could be said that Ruan Lingyu was the center of attention in the Ruan clan at that time. She was extremely dazzling and had a small reputation in Yang City. However, when she was 10 years old, Ruan Lingyu suddenly fell seriously ill. Her entire body was filled with an extreme cold. That cold qi was extremely terrifying and actually froze Ruan Lingyu's room into an ice house. At that time, many experts of the Ruan clan entered Ruan Lingyu's room in order to save her. Unfortunately, the cold qi was too terrifying and the experts of the Ruan clan were all frozen to death in Ruan Lingyu's room. Only Ruan Lingyu's father was strong enough to escape with serious injuries. After 3 days and 3 nights, the cold qi erupting from Ruan Lingyu's body finally stopped. Ruan Lingyu also awoke from her coma. However, from then on, Ruan Lingyu's martial talent seemed to have evaporated into thin air. No matter how Ruan Lingyu cultivated, the dantian in her body was unable to accumulate any yuan power, let alone cultivate yuan power. From then on, Ruan Lingyu had completely become an ordinary person. In fact, Her physique was even worse than an ordinary person's. This was also why Wan Lingyu's face was abnormally pale and sickly all year round, as if she had no bones. At this point, a bitter smile appeared on Wan Lingyu's pretty face as she said, "Because of me, many experts of the Ruan clan have fallen." Originally, the Ruan clan's power in Yang City was pretty good, but from then on, it gradually declined. "Young Master Zhuo, don't you think that I am a jinx?" At this point, Wan Lingyu's pretty face was filled with a bitter smile. Zhuowen's eyebrows slightly furrowed as he stared at Wan Lingyu, his eyes flickering. What happened to Wan Lingyu's body was truly strange. To think that a terrifying cold qi would erupt from her body. "Miss Lingyu, can you extend your hand so that I can inspect it?" Zhuowen suddenly asked Wan Lingyu. Wan Lingyu was taken aback. Her pretty face blushed like a ripe red apple as she lowered her head and did not speak. When he saw Wan Lingyu's reaction, Zhuowen knew that the former had misunderstood his intentions. He coughed dryly and said, "Miss Lingyu, please don't misunderstand. I have done some research on cold qi in the past. Perhaps I can tell the origin of the cold qi in your body from your body." When she heard these words, Wan Lingyu knew that she had misunderstood Zhuowen's words. The bashfulness on her face grew even more intense as she softly said, "Young Master Zhuo, have you really done some research on cold qi?" Nodding, Zhuowen waved his left hand and the holy ice rune on the back of his left hand lit up. It was the extreme frost that he had not used in a long time. The extreme frost was an earth-rank cold qi. However, due to Zhuowen's fire fusion art, he could continuously fuse different types of earth fire, increasing the power of the earth fire to an extremely terrifying degree. The extreme frost was far from being able to compare to the flames created by the fusion of different types of earth fire. Therefore, the power of ice and fire was not equal at all. That was why Zhuowen had never used the holy ice fire rune. After all, if the power of ice and fire was not equal, it was very easy for an explosion to occur during the fusion process. At that time, he would be the unlucky one. Looking at Zhuowen, who was enveloped by countless blue cold qi, Wan Lingyu's beautiful eyes revealed a trace of shock. Although the extreme frost that Zhuowen used could not compare to the cold qi in her body, it was still much more terrifying than the average cold qi. "Miss Lingyu should believe me now, right?" Zhuowen said with a smile. "Since young Master Zhuo has done some research on cold qi, then Lingyu will respectfully accept." Nodding, Wan Lingyu stretched out her right hand. A pair of snow-white lotus arms were placed in front of Zhuowen. The blush on her charming face became more and more intense, and her beautiful eyes were filled with shyness. Before this, she had never come into contact with any man, so it was inevitable that she would feel embarrassed in her heart. Zhuowen did not think too much about it. After hearing Wan Lingyu's description, Zhuowen knew that Wan Lingyu's body was hiding some kind of extraordinary secret, which was why he asked her to investigate. Holding Wan Lingyu's jade-like hand, Zhuowen only felt a cold and slippery touch. Then, the power of the holy ice rune in his left hand swept through Wan Lingyu's right hand and into her body. When the power of the holy ice rune flowed through Wan Lingyu's meridians and finally reached her lower dantian, an extremely terrifying cold energy blocked the power of the holy ice rune. This is Chapter 886. Unruly Lang Ying. At this moment, Zhuowen's gaze was extremely solemn. Earlier, he had used the Ice Saint symbol's power to investigate Wan Lingyu's entire body, passing through her meridians all the way to her dantian. After which, he discovered a shocking scene. This was because Wan Lingyu's entire dantian did not contain yuan power but an endless amount of cold qi. Moreover, this cold qi was extremely terrifying, causing Wan Lingyu's dantian to be frozen by this terrifying cold qi. The connection between the dantian and the meridians at both ends was also sealed by ice, preventing the yuan power in the meridians from entering the dantian. This was the ultimate reason why Wan Lingyu was unable to cultivate. "Miss Lingyu, your dantian." Zhuowen opened his mouth but did not know what to say. A bitter smile appeared at the corners of Wan Lingyu's mouth as she said, "As you can see, my dantian is filled with an endless amount of strange cold qi. This cold qi is extremely powerful and has sealed the meridians around my dantian, causing me to be unable to cultivate. This cold qi was accumulated in my dantian after a serious illness when I was 10 years old. My father had invited many strong practitioners in Yang City to take a look at it, but they were all helpless. Hearing this, Zhuowen revealed a contemplative look. Zhuowen had never heard of cold qi accumulating in the dantian. Generally speaking, the dantian was the most important part of a cultivator's body. At the same time, it was also an extremely fragile part. The cold qi in Wan Lingyu's dantian was extremely terrifying, far more powerful than the extreme cold in Zhuowen's body. However, it still could not compare to heaven stage cold qi. It should be a type of cold qi that was between earth stage and heaven stage. The destructive power of this cold qi should be extremely terrifying. Not to mention the fragile dantian in a person's body. Even if the outside of a person's body was corroded by this cold qi, there was a possibility of death. However, Wan Lingyu currently seemed to be completely fine. The terrifying cold qi in her dantian seemed to be under someone's control. Although it was attached to Wan Lingyu's dantian, it did not harm her in the slightest. Miss Lingyu, was the cold qi in your dantian so powerful from the beginning? Zhuowen felt that the cold air in Wan Lingyu's dantian seemed to have a life of its own and was growing. However, Wan Lingyu shook her head and said, "When I was 10 years old, this cold qi was not very strong, and could only barely seal my dantian and meridians. Now that 7 years have passed, this cold qi has become stronger with the passage of time, and my body is also getting worse year by year." Zhuowen furrowed his brows. This cold qi was very strange. From what Wan Lingyu said, Zhuowen felt that this cold qi seemed to be using Wan Lingyu's body to strengthen itself. This feeling was very strange. If Xiao Hei were here, perhaps it would be able to tell the origin of this cold qi. No matter how hard he thought about it, Zhuowen still could not figure out the origin of the cold qi in Wan Lingyu's body. He could not help but miss the days when Xiao Hei was still around. After all, Xiao Hei had lived much longer than Zhuowen. She must know a lot of things. "You piece of trash, how dare you molest Lingyu? You're courting death." Just as Zhuowen was deep in thought, a shout came from the private room next door. Then, Leng Ying was already standing at the door. She happened to see Zhuowen holding Wan Lingyu's right hand. Her beautiful eyes narrowed, and without any explanation, she struck out with her right palm. Zhuowen did not expect Leng Ying to suddenly appear and attack without any explanation. For a moment, he was caught off guard. Leng Ying took advantage of the opening and struck his chest. Deng deng deng. With a muffled groan, Zhuowen retreated 3 steps, almost out of the range of the carriage. The blood in his body was boiling, and the injuries in his body were almost triggered by this attack. Zhuowen was so shocked that he hurriedly circulated the origin energy in his body to forcefully suppress the injuries in his body. Leng Ying arrived in front of Wan Lingyu and stared at Zhuowen with her beautiful eyes. There was a trace of surprise in her eyes because when she attacked Zhuowen's chest earlier, she discovered that this person's body was as hard as steel. Moreover, he only took 3 steps back after receiving her attack. One had to know that she, Leng Ying, was a 3-wheel Ultimate Emperor Realm cultivator, while the young man in front of her was only a 1-wheel Ultimate Emperor Realm cultivator. There was a gap of 2 whole realms between them. Leng Ying's full-strength attack had only forced Zhuowen back 3 steps. Obviously, this result made Leng Ying somewhat dissatisfied. "I originally thought that you were just a shameless person who did not know how to be grateful. Now, it seems that you're a scum who forgets his morals for a woman. You actually dared to molest Lingyu because she has no cultivation." Leng Ying's beautiful eyes were cold. Just as she was about to drive Zhuowen out again, Wan Lingyu stood in front of Leng Ying. "Sister Leng Ying, you misunderstood. Zhuowen was just checking the condition of the cold qi in my body," Wan Lingyu explained anxiously. "Lingyu, don't be fooled by this guy. The Patriarch has invited so many experts to check the cold qi in your body, but they couldn't find anything wrong with it. How could a 1-wheel Ultimate Emperor Realm piece of trash like him be able to see through it? I think he's just trying to take advantage of you." Leng Ying shook her head. Her beautiful eyes stared at Zhuowen behind Wan Lingyu with extreme hostility. Her eyes were filled with threat and warning. At this moment, Zhuowen had completely suppressed his injuries. He stared coldly at Leng Ying. Leng Ying's repeated attacks had already caused Zhuowen to feel extreme disgust for her. If it weren't for his injuries, he definitely wouldn't have shown her any mercy. Lingyu, get out of the way. We can't let this lecture stay here. Leng Ying waved her right hand in an attempt to push Wan Lingyu aside. However, the latter stubbornly stood in front of Leng Ying and said, I won't allow you to touch young Master Zhuo unless you deal with me as well. You. Leng Ying glared at the stubborn Wan Lingyu and had no choice but to give up. She coldly glanced at Zhuowen and said, Brat, you better know your place. Don't think that a piece of trash like you can get close to the daughter of the Wan clan. Let me tell you, that's impossible. After coldly saying this, Leng Ying returned to the private room next door, leaving only Zhuowen and Wan Lingyu standing there. Young Master Zhuo, I'm sorry, I don't think big sister Leng Ying did it on purpose. She's just taking care of me. Please don't take it to heart. Wan Lingyu apologized to Zhuowen. Zhuowen waved his hand and didn't say anything. Leng Ying was always targeting him. Even though Zhuowen had a good temper, he was still a little angry. However, he couldn't show it in front of Wan Lingyu. Miss Lingyu, the cold qi in your body is very strange. I've discovered that it seems to have a life of its own. It's actually growing stronger and stronger. Suddenly, Zhuowen spoke to Wan Lingyu with a serious expression. You can tell? Wan Lingyu was startled, and then a wisp of bitterness appeared on her pretty face. As the person involved, she naturally had an extremely good understanding of the cold qi within her dantian. During these 7 years, she was practically familiar with the rules of operation of this strange cold qi, and she had a deep understanding of the characteristics of cold qi. Young Master Zhuo, do you have a way to deal with it? Wan Lingyu looked at Zhuowen with some hope. Zhuowen smiled bitterly and said helplessly, I'm sorry, Miss Lingyu, although I can sense that the cold qi in your body is extraordinary, I'm unable to deal with it at the moment. Unable to deal with it at the moment? Can you deal with it in the future? Wan Lingyu's beautiful eyes flickered as she asked in surprise. Zhuowen nodded and said, as you can see, I'm heavily injured and my strength has been greatly reduced. If I were at my peak, I could try to help you expel the cold qi in your body. Zhuowen wasn't speaking carelessly. Back then, he had used the rainbow phoenix to suppress the heaven-rank cold qi in Mu Chunshue's body. Although the cold qi in Wan Lingyu's body was powerful, it paled in comparison to the cold qi in Mu Chunshue's body. If Zhuowen recovered his strength, he would be able to fuse a powerful flame and try to neutralize the cold qi in Wan Lingyu's body. Wan Lingyu didn't doubt Zhuowen's words. She could sense the sincerity in the young man's eyes. She knew that Zhuowen wouldn't lie to her about this. Moreover, she could sense that Zhuowen's injuries were quite severe. The young man before her wasn't as simple as a first-wheel ultimate Emperor realm cultivator. When Wan Lingyu first saw the unconscious Zhuowen, she could sense that the young man before her was no ordinary person. Although Wan Lingyu didn't have any cultivation, her intuition had always been accurate. Young Master Zhuo, I'm looking forward to your strength recovering and helping me expel the cold qi in my body, Wan Lingyu said with a smile. Seeing Wan Lingyu's sweet smile, Zhuowen asked in surprise, Miss Lingyu, do you really believe my words so much? Wan Lingyu blushed slightly and said softly, my intuition tells me that you don't seem like someone who would lie. Hearing this, Zhuowen's face became gloomy. He rubbed his nose. Could it be that she trusted him so much just based on her intuition? This made Zhuowen feel rather awkward. After all, whether or not he could expel the cold qi in Wan Lingyu's body was still unknown. However, Wan Lingyu's trust in him greatly improved Zhuowen's impression of her. If Zhuowen could truly recover his strength, Zhuowen wouldn't mind helping Wan Lingyu expel the cold qi. The two of them chatted for a while. Wan Lingyu felt a little tired and entered another private room to rest. As for Zhuowen, he silently sat cross-legged in the outermost private room of the living room. His eyes flickered. Right now, Zhuowen's condition wasn't very good. His sea of consciousness had been destroyed by the Azure Emperor to the point that it was practically in ruins. He couldn't use his mental energy at all. It would be extremely difficult for him to recover his sea of consciousness. Because of his heavy injuries, the yuan power in his body had dropped to the level of a first-wheel ultimate emperor realm cultivator. Furthermore, his injuries were very serious and could erupt at any time. This made it difficult for Zhuowen to even unleash the strength of a first-wheel ultimate emperor realm cultivator. The most important thing now is to stabilize the injuries in my body. Only then will I be able to unleash my full strength. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He knew that the most troublesome thing for him right now was the injuries in his body. Fortunately, he had the heart of the Nether King. Given a few days, he should be able to completely stabilize his injuries. Chapter 887. Shaoyang clan time flew by like a white steed. 3 days passed by very quickly. Zhuowen spent most of his time recuperating in his private room. During these 3 days, Zhuowen fully utilized the vitality of the Hades King's heart and used its terrifying recovery ability to temporarily suppress the injuries in his body. However, Zhuowen knew that this was only temporarily suppressing his injuries. If he wanted to completely heal his injuries, he would probably need the help of external elixirs. Moreover, a heavenly venerate's nascent soul was even more effective than elixirs. However, the spirit ring was currently in Leng Ying's possession. Zhuowen's eyes flickered coldly when he thought of Leng Ying. Zhuowen loathed such an unreasonable woman from the bottom of his heart. Although Zhuowen's cultivation was still at the ultimate emperor realm, Zhuowen was still able to unleash considerable battle prowess due to his injuries being suppressed. After all, Zhuowen's cultivation was at the initial stage of the sovereign realm. Coupled with the fact that Zhuowen had comprehended the Azura blood spear, he wasn't afraid of a ultimate emperor realm expert like Leng Ying even though he was only at the ultimate emperor realm. Moreover, even if Zhuowen couldn't use his mental energy and yuan energy, he still had his physical body. Zhuowen's great Nirvana son had already reached the 4th level of the Law of Fate. With his current cultivation at the ultimate emperor realm, it was more than enough for him to challenge a ultimate emperor realm expert. He could even put up a fight against a ultimate emperor realm expert. If Zhuowen's injuries were completely healed, Zhuowen's cultivation would gradually recover as well. However, without the assistance of external items, this process would definitely be extremely slow. I need to take back the spirit ring as soon as possible. Zhuowen was even more anxious to take back the spirit ring when he thought of this. Halt! Suddenly, the moving carriage came to a stop. Leng Ying and Ruan Lingyu, who were in the 2 private rooms next door, walked out. Leng Ying merely shot an indifferent glance at Zhuowen before taking the lead to alight from the car. Ruan Lingyu walked to Zhuowen's side, her beautiful eyes filled with confusion as she asked, "I don't know what happened." The carriage actually stopped again. "Let's go out and take a look." Zhuowen chuckled and led Ruan Lingyu out of the carriage. At the front of the group, there was a group of young warriors in green and white robes. They seemed to be discussing something with Commander Ruan. Among them, Commander Ruan had an ugly expression. The robes worn by this group of young warriors were exactly the same. They should belong to the same faction. However, what made Zhuowen unhappy was that these young warriors in green and white robes all had their chins raised and their eyes filled with arrogance. "They're disciples of the Clear Void Valley," Ruan Lingyu suddenly exclaimed. Hearing this, Zhuowen's gaze hardened. He naturally knew of the Clear Void Valley. It was one of the 5 superpowers of Yang City, a colossal existence in Yang City. What he did not expect was that he would actually encounter disciples of the Clear Void Valley on the road. No wonder these young warriors all had arrogant gazes. They were probably relying on the fact that they were disciples of the Clear Void Valley to act so high and mighty. Although these Clear Void Valley disciples had arrogant expressions, their strength was indeed not weak. Among them, the weakest was at the 2nd wheel of the Ultimate Emperor Realm. The strongest had even reached the 5th wheel of the Ultimate Emperor Realm. Commander Ruan said a few more words to the leader of the Clear Void Valley disciples. Then, with an ugly expression, he arrived before Ruan Lingyu and Leng Ying. "Commander Ruan, what happened?" Leng Ying frowned slightly and asked. Commander Ruan's gaze flickered. He sighed and said, "I don't know the specifics. However, These people from the Clear Void Valley have actually reserved the area in a radius of 100 miles in front of them. No one is allowed to enter. What happened up ahead? What? They reserved the area in a radius of 100 miles in front of them? The Clear Void Valley is so daring. What are they doing up ahead? Leng Ying was startled. Her beautiful eyes flickered. What was this girl thinking right now? Zhuowen was also somewhat moved. They actually reserved the area in a radius of 100 miles. This Clear Void Valley's power was indeed extraordinary. After all, the area in a radius of 100 miles was very large. To reserve it would require a huge amount of manpower and resources. However, what Zhuowen was more curious about was what the people from the Clear Void Valley were doing up ahead. Then what should we do? Up ahead is the only road that leads to Yang City. Now that it's been reserved by the Clear Void Valley, what should we do? Leng Ying said somewhat unhappily. Commander Wan shook his head and said helplessly, "We can only wait. Wait until the Clear Void Valley finishes their business up ahead. Only then can we continue on our way." Looks like that's the only way. Ruan Lingyu sighed and interjected. They were very clear about how great the power of the Clear Void Valley was. This was a powerful existence that they could not afford to offend. On the left side of the road ahead, there was a rather large open space. At this moment, there were already quite a few martial artists in different clothes gathered on the open space. These martial artists were divided into 3 groups. Obviously, they were also passers-by who were blocked outside by the Clear Void Valley. The number of martial artists in these 3 groups was about the same, around 15 to 20 people. They should belong to 3 different powers. Let's wait there for a while. Leng Ying looked at the open space on the left side and said to Commander Wan. Commander Wan nodded. He led the group and slowly walked towards the empty land. The arrival of Commander Wan's group had obviously attracted the attention of the other 3 groups on the open space. However, they only casually sized up Commander Wan's group. Most of their gazes were on Leng Ying and Ruan Lingyu. Leng Ying's expression was cold. Her body was curvaceous and her skin was snow-white. Her appearance could be considered to be above average. As for Ruan Lingyu, she was delicate and pitiful. Her face was unnaturally pale, giving people a feeling of pity. Her appearance was even above Leng Ying's. The sudden appearance of 2 beauties naturally attracted the attention of many men. However, these people were not too rude. They only looked at the 2 women for a while before withdrawing their gazes. When the group of people arrived at the open space, Commander Wan ordered the other guards to unequip their horses and set up tents on the spot, preparing to spend the night here. After all, no one knew how long the Clear Void Valley would occupy the area ahead. Thus, Commander Wan naturally had to prepare for a rainy day. The guards and the others moved extremely quickly. They quickly set up the tents. However, what made Zhuowen feel awkward was that the tents were just enough for Commander Wan's group to live in. He, Zhuowen, was the extra one. Because of this, many people looked at him with a trace of mockery and ridicule. "Young Master Zhuo, why don't you rest in my tent first? My tent is more spacious." Just as Zhuowen stood in place, a clear voice rang out. He saw Ruan Lingyu sitting in her tent. Her face was crimson red as she waved at Zhuowen. Ruan Lingyu's actions undoubtedly attracted the gazes of the other people in the group. These gazes were filled with doubt and confusion. Ruan Lingyu was their Ruan family's daughter. At this moment, she was actually waving at a stranger like Zhuowen to enter her tent. Wasn't this inviting a wolf into the house? "Lingyu, don't bother with this lecture. If you let him enter your tent, who knows what he will do?" Leng Ying suddenly said coldly. Ruan Lingyu frowned slightly. Just as she was about to say something, Zhuowen said to Ruan Lingyu with a faint smile, "Miss Lingyu, I appreciate your kindness. Cultivators don't care about trifles. I can spend the night outside." As he spoke, Zhuowen slowly walked to the foot of a tree and gently leaned against it. He narrowed his eyes. As for Leng Ying, he didn't even look at her. Now, Zhuowen's main goal was to snatch the spiritual ring from Leng Ying. Once he got the spiritual ring back, Zhuowen could easily leave the Ruan family's group. At that time, he could rely on the resources in the spiritual ring to recover his cultivation. Looking at Zhuowen's indifferent attitude, Leng Ying's face turned slightly ugly. However, she didn't do anything. Instead, she whispered something to herself. Ruan Lingyu's beautiful eyes flashed slightly. She sighed softly and didn't say anything. She could feel the pride in Zhuowen's heart. He didn't care about food that was given to him. However, the sky wasn't dark yet. Therefore, the group didn't enter their tents to recover their cultivation. Instead, they gathered together and talked about everything under the sun. Deng deng deng. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps could be heard. From the group closest to the Ruan family's group, a graceful young man in a yellow robe walked over. Behind him were two subordinates with strong auras. Commander Ruan and Leng Ying were alert. They turned their heads and stared at the young man. Commander Ruan stood up and cupped his hands at the young man in the yellow robe. He said, "Is there anything I can help you with?" The young man in the yellow robe smiled. He ignored Commander Ruan and stared at Leng Ying and Ruan Lingyu. He smiled and said, "The two ladies should be the Ruan family's leader, Ruan Lingyu, and the Ruan family's number one genius, Miss Leng Ying." "You are?" Leng Ying frowned and asked. "He. I am Xiaoyang Pu from the Xiaoyang family," the young man in the yellow robe said with a faint smile. "What? You are from the Xiaoyang family? Who is Xiaoyang Qinglin to you?" Leng Ying's beautiful eyes were shocked. She quickly asked the young man. The other members of the Ruan family's group were also shocked. They stared at Xiaoyang Pu in horror. Zhuowen, who was leaning on a tree trunk far away, also noticed the strange expressions of the Ruan family. He also looked at Xiaoyang Pu. It seemed that the Xiaoyang family wasn't simple. Otherwise, the Ruan family wouldn't be so shocked after Xiaoyang Pu introduced himself. "Xiaoyang Qinglin is my elder brother." Xiaoyang Pu smiled politely. "I see. I didn't expect Xiaoyang Qinglin to be your elder brother. We were rude before. Please don't take offense." Leng Ying's beautiful eyes flickered. She revealed a rare smile and cupped her hands as she replied. At the same time, there was an uproar in the Ruan family's group. Listening to the discussion around him, Zhuowen also had some understanding of the Xiaoyang family. Chapter 888. Phoenix Feather. Everyone knew that there were 5 major powers in Yang City that were above all other powers. They were the Imperial Family, Clear Void Valley, Thousand Star Palace, Heaven Peak Demon Palace and 5 Elements Sect. Under these 5 major powers, there were countless clans and powers. There were strong and weak clans among these clans. Among the countless clans, there were 4 clans that were recognized as the strongest clans below the 5 powers. These 4 clans were known as aristocratic families. There were only 4 clans that could be called aristocratic families in Yang City, and the Xiaoyang aristocratic family was one of them. This aristocratic family was one of the strongest clans in Yang City and had a far-reaching influence. On the other hand, Xiaoyang Qinglin was an extraordinary person. Based on what others had said, this person was a genius on the Flame God list of Yang City. Although he was only ranked in the middle of the Flame God list, every genius who was ranked on the list was an influential figure in Yang City. For Xiaoyang Qinglin to be ranked in the middle of the list, he was already considered an extremely powerful genius. At this moment, Leng Ying was like a completely different person. She no longer had the cold expression on her face. Instead, she seemed to be overly enthusiastic. The Xiaoyang aristocratic family was not a place that anyone could climb up to. After all, the Xiaoyang aristocratic family was one of the 4 strongest clans. They were extremely powerful and much more powerful than the Ruan family. To be able to meet Xiaoyang Pu on the road was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Leng Ying and the Ruan family. After all, the chances of meeting someone from the Xiaoyang aristocratic family in Yang City were too slim. Moreover, Xiaoyang Pu was Xiaoyang Qinglin's younger brother. In other words, he was the second son of the Xiaoyang aristocratic family. If Leng Ying could form a good relationship with Xiaoyang Pu, it would not only benefit her but also the Ruan family. "I did not expect to meet young Master Xiaoyang here. It is our fortune." Leng Ying cupped her hands and said enthusiastically. The corners of Xiaoyang Piyu's mouth curled up. He glanced at Leng Ying a few times before his gaze landed on the soft Wan Lingyu. There was a trace of passion in his eyes. Leng Ying also noticed Xiaoyang Piyu's gaze. Her jade-like hands stiffened in front of her and there was a trace of embarrassment on her face. However, this trace of embarrassment was quickly covered up by her. Xiaoyang Piyu gently nodded at Leng Ying and walked straight towards Wan Lingyu. He did not care about Leng Ying, whose face became ugly. Miss Wan, this one has heard that your body is frail and sickly. Moreover, the cold qi in your body has accumulated. This one just so happens to have a phoenix feather on my body. This item can drive away the cold qi in a martial artist's body. Please accept it, Miss Wan. Xiaoyang Piyu smiled and waved his right hand. Suddenly, a fiery red feather appeared in his palm and he handed it to Wan Lingyu. As soon as the phoenix feather appeared, the surrounding temperature immediately rose. It was as if a heat wave had appeared out of thin air and spread out. The eyes of the other members of the Wan clan lit up. This phoenix feather was a good item. It was said that it was a feather left behind by a divine beast, the phoenix. The blazing energy it emitted was extremely beneficial to warriors. Although it could not increase a cultivator's cultivation, it could nourish the human body. For some people with low cultivation or no cultivation at all, it had immeasurable benefits. Of course, phoenix feathers were also an extremely precious material that arcana masters greatly desired. Phoenix feathers could be used to set up extremely powerful origin formations. Many people in the Wan clan's team did not expect Xiaoyanpu to be so rich and overbearing, to give such a precious gift as the phoenix feather. What made them even more confused was that Xiaoyanpu valued Wan Lingyu so much. Although Wan Lingyu's appearance was excellent, it was not to the point of being devastatingly beautiful. With Xiaoyang Piyu's taste, he should not be captivated by Wan Lingyu. Although many people did not understand, since Xiaoyang Piyu was so attentive to Wan Lingyu, it was not a bad thing for the Wan clan. In fact, it was a good thing. The Xiaoyang clan was much more powerful than the Wan clan. If the Wan clan could climb up the Xiaoyang clan's branch, it would be extremely beneficial for the Wan clan. At this moment, Leng Ying, who had been ignored by Xiaoyang Piyu, had a slightly gloomy expression. There was a trace of jealousy in her beautiful eyes. In terms of appearance, Wan Lingyu was not much better than her. In terms of cultivation, she was the #1 genius of the Wan clan, while Wan Lingyu was an ordinary person with no cultivation. Leng Ying was a little depressed. Why was Xiaoyang Piyu so cold to her and so attentive to Wan Lingyu? Looking at the attentive Xiaoyang Piyu in front of her, Wan Lingyu was a little stunned. She did not know what to do. She naturally knew Xiaoyang Piyu's identity. He was the second young master of the Xiaoyang clan and the younger brother of the genius Xiaoyang Qinglin. His status was much higher than hers. Even so, Xiaoyang Piyu was so attentive to her. If it were anyone else, they would not be any better than Wan Lingyu. Young Master Xiaoyang. This phoenix feather is too precious. I can't accept it, Wan Lingyu replied timidly. Xiaoyang Piyu smiled indifferently and said gently, Miss Wan, this is a small token of my appreciation. If you don't accept it, do you want me to kneel down and beg you? Lingyu. This is young Master Xiaoyan's appreciation. Just accept it. Leng Ying immediately came to Wan Lingyu's side and said with a light smile. Hearing Leng Ying's words, Wan Lingyu nodded lightly and took the phoenix feather from Xiaoyang Piyu's hands. The warmth of the phoenix feather entered Wan Lingyu's body, causing her face to turn red like a ripe red apple. When the other members of the Wan clan saw Wan Lingyu's rosy face, they all smiled happily. Because of the cold energy in her body, Wan Lingyu had always been weak and sickly. Now that they saw the phoenix feather was effective on Wan Lingyu, they all felt happy for her. Lingyu thanks young Master Xiaoyang for giving me this feather. With a red face, Wan Lingyu bowed gratefully to Xiaoyang Piyu. Miss Wan, you're welcome. Xiaoyang Piyu said gracefully. Young Master Xiaoyang, what is Qingshu Valley doing in front of us? Why did they surround the area of 100 miles in front of us? Leng Ying stood beside Wan Lingyu and asked Xiaoyang Pu. Xiaoyang Pu shook his head and said, "I'm not very clear about this matter. It seems that the people of Qingshu Valley in front of us discovered some kind of treasure. The person who discovered it secretly notified Qingshu Valley. Afterwards, Qingshu Valley sent many disciples here. It's said that Qingshu Valley's #1 expert, Zui Qingfeng, also came here. His goal is the treasure that appeared." "What? Zui Qingfeng also came? It seems that the treasure in front of us is incredible." Leng Ying's beautiful eyes slightly narrowed and she could not help but exclaim. Zui Qingfeng was not only the #1 expert of Qingshu Valley, he was also one of the top 5 Avilders on the Flame God list. Moreover, this person was personally selected by the Flame Emperor to participate in the entrance exam of Jioshan Academy. He was a famous peerless Avildor in Yang City. This Zui Qingfeng was much more famous than Xiaoyang Qinglin of the Xiaoyang family. His strength was also much stronger than the latter. It was said that his cultivation had already broken through the Xuanzuan realm. Of course, the other 4 geniuses who were on the same level as Zui Qingfeng were not weaker than the latter. They were Mo Ying of the Heavenly Peak Devil Palace, Xian Xing of the 10,000 Star Palace, Q2 of the 5 Elements sect and Prince Mo Lingtian of the Imperial family. These 5 were the most dazzling geniuses of Yang City, especially Prince Mo Lingtian. His strength was even more terrifying than the other 4. It was said that he was a peerless Avildor personally cultivated by the Flame Emperor. Prince Xiaoyang. Could it be that even with your Xiaoyang family's reputation, Qingshu Valley is not willing to let us pass? Leng Ying asked again. She knew that the relationship between the 4 great families and the 5 great powers of Yang City was not ordinary. With the Xiaoyang family's reputation, just letting Qingshu Valley pass should not be a big problem. However, Xiaoyang Pu shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "Even so, those Qingshu Valley disciples guarding the entrance are not willing to let us pass no matter what. I'm afraid that the thing inside is extraordinary. Otherwise, Qingshu Valley would not be so cautious. I really don't know what kind of treasure is hidden in the forest ahead. It actually caused Qingshu Valley to mobilize so many people." Leng Ying nodded her head. Her beautiful eyes were filled with doubt. The other people's expressions were no different from Leng Ying's. They were all extremely curious about the treasure that appeared in the forest ahead. Unfortunately, they did not dare to enter the forest. After all, there were disciples of Qingshu Valley inside. If they entered, it was likely that they would not be able to return. Zhuoan, who was silently leaning against a tree trunk, was also extremely curious about what kind of treasure was hidden in the forest guarded by Qingshu Valley disciples. However, compared to this, Zhuoan felt a trace of vigilance towards Xiaoyang Pu's sudden enthusiasm towards Wan Lingyu. The Xiaoyang family was much stronger than the Wan family, and Wan Lingyu was not a peerless beauty. Moreover, this was clearly the first time Xiaoyang Pu had met Wan Lingyu and the others. However, it was precisely because of this that Xiaoyang Pu had prepared a phoenix feather for Wan Lingyu the first time they met. This made Zhuowen feel that something was wrong. As for what was wrong, he couldn't tell. There should not be anything on Wan Lingyu that Xiaoyang Pu wanted, unless Zhuowen suddenly thought of the strange cold energy in Wan Lingyu's dantian. In addition, Xiaoyang Pu had said that there was cold energy in Wan Lingyu's body. It seemed that he understood Wan Lingyu's physical condition very well. From these various suspicious points, Zhuowen keenly felt that there was something strange about this Xiaoyang Pu. Xiaoyang Pu chatted with Wan Lingyu and Leng Ying for a while. His gaze suddenly noticed the pitch-black spirit ring on Leng Ying's finger. His gaze revealed a trace of astonishment. Xiaoyang Pu was very clear about the preciousness of this spirit ring. It was a storage treasure that only heavenly venerables could refine. In the younger generation of the Xiaoyang family, only his brother, Xiaoyang Qinglin, was qualified to have his own spirit ring. Even Xiaoyang Pu was not qualified to have it. This was also why his gaze revealed a trace of astonishment when he saw the spirit ring on Leng Ying's finger. Leng Ying also noticed Xiaoyang Pu's gaze. Especially when she saw Xiaoyang Pu staring at the spirit ring on her finger with astonishment, a trace of vanity appeared on Leng Ying's face. She slightly raised her chin. Chapter 889. Late at night I didn't expect Miss Lung Ying to have a spiritual ring. It seems like the Ruan family is really secretive. Xiaoyang Pu said meaningfully. Lung Ying shook her head, but the vanity in her eyes became more intense. She could see the envy in Xiaoyang Pu's eyes. After all, even Xiaoyang Pu didn't have a spiritual ring, but she did. She felt that the gap between her and Xiaoyang Pu wasn't that big. Young Master Xiaoyang, you've misunderstood. This spiritual ring wasn't given to me by the Ruan family. I got it by chance. Lung Ying said with a smile, full of confidence. Xiaoyang Pu was stunned, then he smiled and said, "It seems like Miss Lung Ying is quite lucky to get a spiritual ring by chance. I'm so envious." Ruan Lingyu wanted to say that the spirit ring belonged to Zhuo Wen, but she was stopped by Lung Ying. She swallowed the words she wanted to say. Xiaoyang Pu chatted with Lung Ying for a while, then he returned to his team with his two subordinates. However, Zhuowen, who was leaning against a tree, looked even colder. This Lung Ying was really big-breasted but brainless. That Xiaoyang Pu didn't have a spiritual ring, but she still showed off her spiritual ring in front of him, showing off her superiority. Unfortunately, such an outcome would bring irreparable consequences to Lung Ying. Lung Ying raised her chin and turned around. She immediately noticed Zhuowen's cold gaze. She said coldly to Zhuowen, "You lecher, trash, what are you looking at? Move your dog eyes away." Zhuowen sneered and said indifferently, "There's really nothing on you that's worth looking at. If it wasn't for someone stealing a spiritual ring, I wouldn't even pay attention to that thief." "What did you say? Trash, do you dare to say it again?" Lung Ying's beautiful eyes were cold. She took a step forward and flew towards Zhuowen. She wanted to teach Zhuowen a lesson. Looking at Lung Ying, who was rushing towards him, Zhuowen's eyes were extremely cold. He took a step forward and flew upwards like a bird, dodging Lung Ying's attack. Rumble. Lung Ying's palm wind whizzed past and viciously slammed into the tree trunk in front of her, leaving behind an extremely deep palm print. Whoosh. Taking a step in the air, Zhuowen was like a great rock spreading its wings, instantly landing behind Lung Ying. Shortly after, Zhuowen's foot stomped on the ground. His entire body was like a gust of wind as he blasted out a palm strike towards Lung Ying's back. Whether it was in terms of cultivation or battle experience, Lung Ying was far inferior to Zhuowen. Although Zhuowen's cultivation was only at the ultimate emperor realm, which was 2 realms lower than Lung Ying's, Zhuowen was still capable of teaching her a lesson. Lung Ying's pretty face changed slightly when she felt the palm wind whistling towards her back. Zhuowen's battle awareness had somewhat exceeded her expectations. At this moment, she was just about to unleash a palm strike and was about to run out of energy. However, this brat had actually launched an attack at this moment. She had no time to turn around and defend herself. However, just as Zhuowen's palm wind whistled towards her, a burly figure blocked in front of Lung Ying. He also struck out a palm strike, directly slamming into Zhuowen's right palm. Rumble. When the 2 palms collided, a muffled thunderous sound rang out. Immediately after, a gust of wind swept out in all directions. Zhuowen let out a muffled groan as he took a few steps back. His gaze was grave as he stared at the figure that had suddenly appeared in front of him. This person was none other than Commander Ruan of the Ruan clan. Commander Ruan's strength was slightly stronger than Lung Ying's as he was at the ultimate emperor realm. Even though Zhuowen's cultivation was originally very high, he was only at the ultimate emperor realm right now. Therefore, he was naturally at a disadvantage when fighting against Commander Ruan. Compared to Zhuowen, who had taken a few steps back, Commander Ruan's figure swayed slightly before he steadied himself. He stared at the retreating Zhuowen in astonishment. The youth in front of him was only at the ultimate emperor realm. However, the palm strike he had unleashed was extremely powerful. Even Commander Ruan couldn't help but sway. This strength had clearly surpassed the limits of a ultimate emperor realm cultivator. At this moment, Lung Ying had also regained her senses. She walked to Commander Ruan's side and pointed at Zhuowen as she scolded, "What a coward. You don't dare to fight me head-on and instead launch a sneak attack from behind. Are you still a man?" As soon as she said this, the other guards in the Ruan clan looked at Zhuowen with disdain. Their cultivations weren't high, so they naturally couldn't see through Zhuowen's strength. They only thought that Zhuowen was really as Leng Ying had said. He didn't dare to fight them head-on and had instead launched a sneak attack from behind. It's clearly your cultivation that's lacking. As an Ultimate Emperor Realm cultivator, you can't even catch a mere Ultimate Emperor Realm piece of trash like me. Instead, I took advantage of your weakness. Doesn't that mean you're worse than trash? Now you're trying to slander me. Don't you feel ashamed? Zhuowen said coldly. A piece of trash like you really has a big mouth. You look like you're not convinced. Then let's have a try. Let's see what qualifications you have to be so arrogant. Leng Ying's pretty face was ugly as she spoke coldly. Enough. We're all on the same side. Why should we fight to the death? Sister Leng Ying and young Master Zhuo, both of you should take a step back. Don't fight to the death. Ruan Lingyu stepped forward. Leng Ying snorted coldly. She raised her chin and said indifferently, "Since Lingyu has stepped forward, I'll let you off for now. However, if there's a next time, I won't let you off so easily." As she spoke, Leng Ying was like a proud peacock as she slowly walked back into her tent. She didn't even look at Zhuowen. Commander Ruan looked at Zhuowen meaningfully. A pensive look appeared in his eyes. However, he didn't care too much about it. After all, Zhuowen was only an Ultimate Emperor Realm cultivator. He didn't think much of him. "Everyone, take a rest here," Commander Ruan shouted and returned to the group of guards. He chatted and laughed with the guards. For a moment, no one paid any attention to Zhuowen, who was standing by the side. Zhuowen didn't feel awkward. Instead, he sat down cross-legged under a tree in a remote corner and began to recuperate. The only thing he wanted to do now was to quickly recover his injuries and cultivation. Once he completely recovered his cultivation, it wouldn't be difficult for him to gain the Flame Emperor's attention in Yang City. Once he gained the Flame Emperor's attention, Zhuowen would be able to enter Jioshan Academy through the Flame Emperor's means. There are still 4 months until the Jioshan Academy's examination, Zhuowen muttered to himself as he slowly closed his eyes. Ruan Lingyu originally wanted to go to Zhuowen's side. However, she was stopped by Leng Ying. Helpless, she could only give up. Time gradually passed as the blazing sun in the sky slowly descended. The horizon was gradually covered in a layer of darkness. The few groups on the empty ground gathered together and lit up a bonfire. A group of people gathered around the bonfire, chatting and laughing. Zhuowen continued to silently sit cross-legged in a corner, appearing extremely inconspicuous. Of course, the other members of the Ruan clan seemed to have forgotten about Zhuowen and didn't even spare him a glance. Deng deng deng. The crisp sound of footsteps approached. Zhuowen's ears twitched slightly and he slowly opened his eyes. He saw Ruan Lingyu come in front of him and pass a skewer of crispy barbecued meat to Zhuowen, saying, "Young Master Zhuowen, seeing that you haven't eaten anything for a day, take this barbecued rabbit meat." A faint smile appeared on Zhuowen's face as he received the barbecued meat without any hesitation. He took a bite and felt that the meat was crispy, fragrant, and extremely delicious. Zhuowen could not help but feel his appetite whet as he finished the barbecued meat in a few bites. "Miss Lingyu, did you barbecue this meat?" Zhuowen asked Ruan Lingyu. Ruan Lingyu nodded and softly said, "I just barbecued it." Looking at young Master Zhuo's expression, it seems that the meat I barbecued is not bad. It's not just not bad, it's simply a delicacy. Zhuowen gave her a thumbs up. Hearing Zhuowen's praise, Ruan Lingyu's cheeks turned slightly red. Perhaps it was because of the phoenix feather, but Ruan Lingyu's complexion was much better than before. Her face was no longer as pale as before and had become much rosier. After chatting with Zhuowen for a while, Ruan Lingyu returned to the bonfire. She knew that Zhuowen didn't have a good relationship with Leng Ying and the others, so she didn't invite Zhuowen to sit by the bonfire. After all, if another conflict occurred, it wouldn't be good for everyone. The night gradually deepened and soon, it was the middle of the night. At this moment, the few groups on the empty ground had all returned to their own tents to sleep. Poochie. A cluster of flames erupted from the bonfire that had yet to be extinguished, emitting a faint sound. Soon after, Zhuo Wen slowly opened his eyes. From his senses, he could sense 4 figures slowly approaching this place from the other groups in the open space. Moreover, Zhuo Wen discovered that the auras of these 4 figures weren't any weaker than Commander Wan's. It was obvious that all 4 of them were 4-wheeled Ultimate Emperor Realm cultivators. Zhuo Wen didn't act rashly. Instead, he silently sat in the shadows. His cultivation had dropped too much. Perhaps he could fight 4-wheeled Ultimate Emperor Realm cultivators if he added on the strength of his physical body, but he would still be at a disadvantage. Now that 4 4-wheeled Ultimate Emperor Realm cultivators had suddenly appeared, Zhuo Wen would undoubtedly be courting death if he acted rashly and alerted them. Therefore, Zhuo Wen decided to wait and see. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Their target is Leng Ying? Narrowing his eyes, Zhuo Wen pondered for a moment. Then, a trace of understanding appeared on his face as he silently observed the movements of the 4 people. Boom! The 4 of them exchanged glances. Then, the powerful aura of 4-wheeled Ultimate Emperor Realm cultivators exploded from their bodies. Leng Ying's tent was instantly torn apart. There was a cry of shock. Then, the 4 people acted decisively and sealed all the major acupoints on Leng Ying's body. She couldn't move at all. Who is it? How dare you trespass on my Ruan clan's territory? Chapter 890. The man in black. Commander Ruan's shout immediately woke up the other people in the tent. In an instant, the Ruan family's team was in chaos. One by one, the guards sleepily crawled out of their tents, not understanding the situation. Among the 4 black figures, one of the black figures took a step forward and pounced towards Commander Ruan. With a loud bang, Yuan power surged in all directions and a gale howled. That black figure collided with Commander Ruan. The other 3 black figures looked at each other. They sealed all of Leng Ying's acupuncture points and carried her on their shoulders. Then, the 3 of them turned into 3 streaks of light and rushed towards the dense forest on the other side of the open space. Soon, they disappeared from everyone's sight. Boom! A thunderous sound rang out. Commander Ruan and the black figure, who were fighting fiercely, both retreated dozens of steps. Commander Ruan angrily asked, "Who are you? Why did you kidnap Miss Leng Ying?" The 4 black figures that appeared just now were all dressed in black. Their faces were covered by a black cloth. It was impossible to see their true faces. The black figure did not answer Commander Ruan's question. Instead, he slowly retreated. With a step, his speed instantly rose to the extreme. He was actually planning to escape. "Where do you think you're going?" Commander Ruan shouted. Yuan power surged out of his right palm. The surging Yuan power condensed into countless Yuan power arrows and shot towards the black figure. The black-clothed man coldly snorted. With a wave of his right hand, a shield soul treasure appeared in his hand and blocked in front of him. After blocking the countless Yuan power arrows that were flying towards him, the black-clothed man did not dare to stay any longer. With a stomp of his foot, he completely disappeared from the spot. Whoosh! Commander Ruan came to the place where the black figure was just now. When he saw that the black figure had completely disappeared into the dense forest, a trace of exasperation appeared in his eyes. While everyone's attention was focused on the black-clothed man, Zhuo Wen, who was originally sitting cross-legged in the shadows, had already quietly left the open space. He was heading towards the depths of the forest where the black-clothed man had left. The commotion caused by the Ruan family's team was not small. Naturally, it attracted the attention of the other teams in the open space. There were even a few angry complaints. Clearly, they were extremely unhappy that they had been woken up in the middle of the night. Thud thud thud. Among the Xiaoyang family's troops, Xiaoyang Pu led a group of people to the Ruan family's tent. Xiaoyang Pu, who was dressed in a yellow robe, asked Ruan Lingyu, who was panicking, "Miss Ruan, what's going on?" Ruan Lingyu had not been out for long, so she did not know much about what had happened. She only knew that Leng Ying had been kidnapped. Commander Ruan came to Ruan Lingyu's side and said politely to Xiaoyang Pu, "Young Master Xiaoyang, it's like this." Very quickly, Commander Ruan recounted everything that had happened. Xiaoyang Pu furrowed his brows and coldly said, How preposterous! How dare they act so tyrannically in my Xiaoyang clan's group? They must have eaten a leopard's guts. Young Master Xiaoyang, what should we do now? Sister Leng Ying is the #1 prodigy of the Ruan family after all. If anything happens to her, we won't be able to explain it to our family. Ruan Lingyu was so anxious that she was about to cry. These people are very strange, and they are so familiar with your Ruan clan's camp. I'm afraid there are spies in your team, Xiaoyang Pu analyzed. Spies? Impossible. Our group is made up of subordinates trained by the Ruan clan. They are all loyal to the Ruan clan. It's impossible for anyone to betray us. Ruan Lingyu shook her head and denied it. Hearing Ruan Lingyu's words, Xiaoyang Pu's face showed a trace of doubt. Just as he was about to speak, Commander Ruan, who was standing beside Ruan Lingyu, suddenly spoke. Young miss, our Ruan clan's people naturally cannot be spies. However, don't forget that Zhuowen, who was taken in halfway, is not a member of the Ruan clan. Moreover, this person's origin is unknown and his relationship with Leng Ying is not good. At this point, Commander Ruan did not continue because there was no need to. After all, his meaning was very clear. Zhuowen was not a member of the Ruan clan. Moreover, his relationship with Leng Ying was extremely bad. During the day, they almost fought. Therefore, if there really was a spy in the Ruan clan, it must be Zhuowen. Young Master Zhuo wouldn't go so far, right? I don't think he's that kind of person. Ruan Lingyu frowned as she defended herself. Young miss, you may know a person's face but not his heart. After all, Zhuowen's origin is unknown. Who knows if he's good or bad? Commander Ruan shook his head. When Xiaoyang Pu heard this, he interrupted, since the two of you believe that the spy is Zhuowen, can you let him come out to prove his innocence? If it's a misunderstanding, we won't bother him too much. Commander Ruan nodded. He lifted his foot and walked towards the shadow of the tree trunk where Zhuowen was. However, Commander Ruan's expression was extremely gloomy when he returned. Commander Ruan, what's wrong? Where's young Master Zhuo? Seeing that Commander Ruan had returned, Ruan Lingyu quickly asked. That Zhuowen is not there, nor is he in our Ruan clan's tent. I'm afraid that this person is the spy. After he kidnapped Leng Ying, he escaped without a trace. Commander Ruan said with an ugly expression. How is that possible? Ruan Lingyu's face turned pale as she took a few steps back. Her beautiful eyes were still filled with disbelief. In her impression, it was impossible for that resolute-looking young man to do such a thing. However, the clues presented before her eyes made her believe that the person who betrayed their Ruan clan's tent was Zhuowen. Xiaoyang Pu, who was standing at the side, looked as if he was deep in thought. After a while, he smiled and said, the 4 black-clothed men should not be far from here. Also, that Zhuowen you mentioned should not be too far away. Why don't we split up and search for him in the dense forest? Hearing this, Ruan Lingyu's beautiful eyes were filled with joy. She said softly, Young Master Xiaoyang, are you willing to help our Ruan clan's team find Sister Leng Ying? Xiaoyang Pu nodded and said elegantly, it's my honor to be able to serve Miss Ruan. Of course, I'm willing. Ruan Lingyu's pretty face flushed red as she looked at the elegant and cultured Xiaoyang Pu in front of her. A rare trace of shyness appeared in her eyes. Her shy and beautiful appearance made Xiaoyang Pu take a few more glances at her. Haha. Since young Master Xiaoyang is willing to help our Ruan clan's team, let's go and search for Miss Leng Ying now. Otherwise, there might be unforeseen circumstances. Commander Ruan said happily. Commander Ruan is right. Let's split up and search. Your Ruan clan's team will search this way. I'll lead my men to search this way. If we find someone, use this signal lamp to inform the other party. Xiaoyang Pu nodded and tossed a palm-sized signal lamp to Commander Ruan with his right hand. Receiving the signal lamp, Commander Ruan cupped his hands at Xiaoyang Pu and led the Ruan clan's team into the dense forest on the left. Soon, they disappeared into the depths of the dense forest. Looking at the Ruan clan's team leaving, Xiaoyang Pu's eyes flickered. A strange smile appeared on his face as he led the team into the dense forest on the right. Whoosh! In the dense forest in the middle of the night, It was so dark that one couldn't even see one's fingers. A black shadow flitted through the darkness, stirring up the leaves. The rustling sound of leaves rustling could be heard from the surrounding dense forest. This black shadow was extremely cautious. While it flashed through the dense forest, it would occasionally stop and observe its surroundings. After confirming that no one was following it, it would once again rush forward. After repeating this several times, it increased its speed and continued to fly forward. Dozens of meters behind this black shadow, a figure with a weak aura was closely following behind this black shadow. This person was quite young. It was Zhuowen, who had secretly followed the black-clothed man from the Ruan clan's tent. At this moment, Zhuowen appeared to be extremely cautious. The aura in his body was restrained to the extreme. Moreover, Zhuowen had the 100 transformation technique, so his control over his aura was much stronger than other warriors. This was also the main reason why Zhuowen had not been discovered by the black-clothed man in front of him, even though Zhuowen had been following him for so long. "Friend, I know that you have been following me for a long time. Quickly show yourself. Don't force me to pull you out." Suddenly, the black-clothed man in front suddenly stopped. A cold voice slowly resounded through the dense forest. Dozens of meters away, Zhuowen also stopped and hid behind an inconspicuous tree trunk. His heart skipped a beat as he thought to himself, did this person really discover me? However, what made Zhuowen suspicious was that the black-clothed man turned his head and looked in another direction instead of Zhuowen's direction. Not coming out. All right. Then don't blame me," the black-clothed man said again. His entire body seemed to have let out a sigh of relief. Unexpectedly, he continued on his way and rushed towards the depths of the dense forest. How cunning. It's actually a smoke screen to deceive others. Looking at the black-clothed man in front of him who continued to move forward, Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. His heart was rather moved. The fog that this person released just now could easily fool the person who was following him and expose his whereabouts. Fortunately, Zhuowen was cautious by nature and did not take the initiative to show himself because of the black-clothed man's words. Otherwise, the outcome would be worrying. Not long later, the black-clothed man arrived in front of a shrub in the deepest part of the dense forest. He looked around and discovered that no one was paying attention to him. Then, he drilled into the shrub. Looks like the black-clothed men are all behind this shrub. His eyes flickered. Zhuowen hesitated for a moment. Then, he stepped on the ground and directly drilled into the shrub. During this time, Zhuowen was even more careful and did not let the shrub make too much noise. After drilled out of the shrub, Zhuowen arrived at the other side of the shrub. There was actually a rather hidden cave there. At this moment, there were traces of dim yellow light flickering in the cave, reflecting a few messy shadows. The black-clothed man observed his surroundings for a moment before entering the cave. Let's go take a look. Chapter 891. Self-directed and self-acted. At the back of the cave, there was an extremely inconspicuous groove. Zhuowen's eyes were sharp, and he discovered this groove at a glance. Thus, he shrank his body and squeezed into the groove, which was just enough to accommodate Zhuowen's body. Silently hiding in the groove, Zhuowen listened to the conversation in the cave. At this moment, there was a bonfire burning in the cave. A dim yellow light was emitted from the bonfire, illuminating the dark cave. Inside the cave, there were 4 black-clothed men with black face veils surrounding Leng Ying, who was lying limply at the side. "Who are you?" Leng Ying curled up her delicate body, and her beautiful eyes stared at the 4 black-clothed men in front of her in horror as she shouted. Until now, Leng Ying still did not understand why these 4 black-clothed men would appear out of nowhere and kidnap her. One of the black-clothed men did not say anything. He walked to Leng Ying's side and lifted her up. Then, he took the black spirit ring from her hand and casually threw Leng Ying to one side. Bang! Leng Ying struggled painfully, and leaned against the edge of the cave wall. She finally knew the purpose of these 4 black-clothed men. They were here for the spirit ring in her hand. "That spirit ring is mine. What do you want?" Leng Ying clenched her teeth, unwilling to let her spirit ring be taken away like this. "Hee hee. It's yours." That's right. Now, I'll give you a choice. Either you erase the spirit imprint on the spirit ring, or you die. The leader of the black-clothed men held the spirit ring in his hand as he stared coldly at Leng Ying, and said in a hoarse voice. Just now, when this black-clothed man was about to open the spirit ring, he realized that there was a spirit force on the surface of the spirit ring that prevented him from opening it. Obviously, the spirit ring had already recognized its owner. Unless they removed the original spirit imprint, they would not be able to open the spirit ring. Leng Ying's pretty face was deathly pale, and her heart sank to the bottom. This spirit ring didn't belong to her in the first place, but was taken from Zhuowen. Therefore, this soul imprint belonged to Zhuowen. How could she possibly have a way to erase the soul imprint on this spirit ring? The black-robed man walked up to Leng Ying and placed the spirit ring in front of her. He said coldly, "You only have one chance. Either you undo the soul imprint on the spirit ring or you die." Feeling the murderous intent in the black-robed man's eyes, Leng Ying's delicate body trembled. This spiritual ring was not hers, so how could she know how to remove the soul imprint? "Looks like you're really not afraid of death." The black-clothed man's eyes narrowed. Unknowingly, a dagger had appeared in his right hand. He pressed it against Leng Ying's raw. The sharp coldness caused all the hairs on Leng Ying's body to stand on end. "Don't kill me. To tell you the truth, this spirit ring is not mine, and the soul imprint on it does not belong to me. I do not have the ability to erase it," Leng Ying hurriedly shouted. Are you saying that the ring isn't yours? Do you think we're 3-year-old children?" The black-clothed man's eyes narrowed. Soon after, he exerted force on the dagger in his hand. A glaring wound appeared on the snow-white skin on Leng Ying's neck, causing Leng Ying to involuntarily gulp. She shouted, "It's really not mine. It's Zhuowen, one of the young men that we rescued from the Ruan family's team. I got the spirit ring from that young man. When I took the spirit ring, that Zhuowen refused to remove the soul imprint no matter what. Therefore, I had no choice but to give up. I planned to return to Yang City and ask the family's experts to forcefully erase the soul imprint on the spirit ring." Hearing this, the black-clothed man's right hand paused. He stared coldly at Leng Ying and said, "Is this true? I'm really not lying to you, four sirs. The spirit ring has already been taken by you, and now my life is in your hands. Why would I need to lie to you, four sirs?" Leng Ying hurriedly said. In the groove outside the cave, Zhuowen naturally heard the conversation clearly. The coldness in his heart towards Leng Ying grew even stronger. Deng deng deng. Suddenly, hurried footsteps sounded from the bushes outside the cave. Xiaoyang Pu had already brought a group of people and was rushing towards the cave. Zhuowen, who was in the groove, naturally noticed Xiaoyang Pu and his group. However, what made Zhuowen puzzled was that Xiaoyang Pu had arrived too quickly. The black-clothed man had just arrived, and Xiaoyang Pu was already able to find such a hidden cave. Although he was puzzled, Zhuowen shrank his body even further into the groove. This did not attract the attention of Xiaoyang Pu and his group. Xiaoyang Pu and his group directly rushed into the cave. At the same time, Xiaoyang Pu loudly shouted, "Audacious thieves, you actually dared to hide in this cave. I, Xiaoyang Pu of the Xiaoyang aristocratic family, am here. Quickly hand over Miss Leng Ying. Otherwise, you will have to bear the consequences." Xiaoyang Pu's voice was very loud. Naturally, the few people in the cave heard him clearly. Among them, 4 of the black-clothed men's eyes flashed. However, Leng Ying's beautiful eyes were filled with hope. She knew that if Xiaoyang Pu had arrived, then she would be saved. "Big brother, what should we do?" One of the black-clothed men stepped forward and asked the leader of the black-clothed men. "Let's go. This Xiaoyang Pu is not simple. Do not confront him directly." After the leader of the black-clothed men finished speaking, he took a step forward and directly rushed out of the cave. The other 3 black-clothed men behind him followed unhurriedly. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As soon as the 4 black figures appeared, Xiaoyang Pu immediately led his group to intercept them. Among them, Xiaoyang Pu was the most ferocious. He took a step forward and blasted out his right palm. He collided head-on with the leader of the black-clothed men. Poochie. The leader of the black-clothed men was directly pushed back by the palm. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were filled with dread and fear. This scene was coincidentally witnessed by Leng Ying, who had just walked out of the cave. Leng Ying's beautiful eyes were filled with extraordinary splendor when she saw the powerful black-clothed man being pushed back by Xiaoyang Pu in one move. Don't fight head-on. Leave this place immediately, the leader of the black-clothed men shouted. With a wave of his right hand, he threw out 3 black balls. When the balls rolled into the crowd, they suddenly exploded, spreading out clouds of white smoke. The smell of the white smoke was extremely pungent, causing Xiaoyang Pu and his men to retreat. Let's go. As the white smoke rose, the 4 black-clothed men turned into 4 black lights and rushed toward the dense forest on the other side. Let's see where you are going, Xiaoyang Pu shouted. He took a step forward and chased after the 4 black-clothed men like a rock spreading its wings. In an instant, he disappeared from everyone's sight. While everyone's attention was on the black-clothed men and Xiaoyang Pu, Zhuoan, who was hiding in the groove at the back of the cave, also quietly followed. Leng Ying walked out of the cave and looked at Xiaoyang Pu's disappearing figure with a touch of worry in her beautiful eyes. She said to the group of the Xiaoyang family, "Young Master Xiaoyang went to chase after the 4 black-clothed men alone. I'm afraid it will be dangerous. Why don't you all go together? What do you know? Young Master Xiaoyang Pu's strength is not as little as what you have seen. With young Master's strength, he will have no problem fighting the 4 black-clothed men alone." A guard in the group sneered. Leng Ying's beautiful eyes flashed slightly and she became silent. Just as the guard said, the strength that Xiaoyang Pu had just displayed was indeed much stronger than the leader of the black-clothed men. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 4 black-clothed men shuttled through the dense forest like agile monkeys. Their speed was extremely fast, but Xiaoyang Pu was not slow either. He followed closely behind the 4 black-clothed men. Dozens of meters behind the 5 black-clothed men, a ghostly figure quietly followed them. This figure was naturally Zhuoan. The spiritual ring was too important to Zhuoan. He could not ignore it. After about half an incense stick's time, the 4 black-clothed men suddenly stopped on a thick tree trunk. They calmly stared at Xiaoyang Pu, who was following behind them. Whoosh! Xiaoyang Pu stopped in front of the 4 black-clothed men. His robe and long hair fluttered without any wind. His face was full of arrogance. Under the foot of a tree dozens of meters away, Zhuoan crouched and silently observed the confrontation between Xiaoyang Pu and the black-clothed men. He wanted to see how Xiaoyang Pu would snatch the spiritual ring from the 4 black-clothed men. After all, Xiaoyang Pu's cultivation was at the peak of the ultimate emperor realm. The 4 black-clothed men were also at the ultimate emperor realm. Xiaoyang Pu's chances of winning against the 4 black-clothed men were not as high as one would imagine. Just as Zhuoan was looking forward to the battle between the 5 black-clothed men and him taking advantage of the chaos, the 4 black-clothed men suddenly removed the black veils on their faces. They all knelt on one knee before Xiaoyang Pu and said in unison, "Young Master, young Master." Seeing the 4 black-clothed men's strange actions, Zhuoan was stunned at first. Then, he revealed a thoughtful expression. Xiaoyang Pu placed his hands behind his back and said indifferently, "Have you obtained the spiritual ring? Young Master, don't worry. We have already obtained the spiritual ring." The leader of the black-clothed men was a burly man with a full beard. At this moment, he carefully came before Xiaoyang Pu and handed the spiritual ring he had snatched from Leng Ying. Looking at the spiritual ring lying quietly in his palm, Xiaoyang Pu's eyes were filled with excitement. Among the younger generation of his family, only his elder brother, Xiaoyang Qinglin, had a spiritual ring. He had never had one before. Therefore, Xiaoyang Pu's desire for the spiritual ring was no less than Leng Ying's. In fact, it was even more exuberant. After all, the spiritual ring was not only a storage space, but also a symbol of nobility. Young Master, according to Leng Ying, the spiritual ring does not belong to her. Therefore, Leng Ying has no way of removing the spiritual imprint on the spiritual ring. The burly man hesitated for a moment before speaking the truth. If the spiritual imprint does not belong to Leng Ying, then whose is it? Xiaoyang Piyu's eyes flickered with a cold light as he spoke with some displeasure. The burly man lowered his head and carefully said, according to Leng Ying, she snatched the spiritual ring from Zhuowen. That Zhuowen is the young man rescued by the Ruan clan. Oh, it's actually that Zhuowen? Xiaoyang Piyu narrowed his eyes. This was not the first time he had heard of Zhuowen. Before they departed, he had heard of him from Ruan Lingyu several times. It seemed that Ruan Lingyu was quite concerned about Zhuowen. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.